Glad they were able to
Flooding
help
affects
this
everybody.
one. It does. Right. It does. So let's talk about where you're going to be in the rain this morning with Chris.
Yeah, Louisville, one spot, along with many other cities here in the south. I-20, one spot we're going to keep an eye out for, especially here. Even northern Louisiana, some afternoon activity when it comes to scattered thunderstorms. Heavier, though, into eastern Mississippi, western Alabama, and then Georgia. Some afternoon storms possible. A lot of activity to the north right now. Pretty quiet here with the exception of the Gulf Coast. As we go into your afternoon, we're going to see these individual storms really start to blossom. You know how it goes, the daytime heating, especially if we get some breaks and the cloud cover. We're going to see these scattered showers and storms. Possible flooding is going to be another issue I have to look out for. Even though it's been a while since we've had rain here across many areas in the southeast, we had some heavy downpours in northern Alabama last night. That prompted some flash flood warnings. More to come, and if that happens over some of the same areas, we could see some ponding on the road and rising rivers as well. Jim, Steph?
All right, so the cost of natural disasters does not just show up in the repairs to homes, businesses, and infrastructure.
Yes.
Whether it's from the flooding of Florence, the wildfires in California, or the destruction that is caused by several typhoons in Japan.
Okay, it all takes a toll on your wallet by increasing the prices you pay at your local grocery stores. Joining us on the phone right now is Clark Schweers, head of the Forensic Insurance and Recovery Practice at BDO in Washington, D.C. All right, let's start out with Hurricane Florence. Obviously several industries taking a hit. How will consumers outside of the Carolinas feel that pinch in their wallet?
Good morning, Steph and Jim. Absolutely, consumers are going to be hit with steeper grocery bills due to Florence. North Carolina is actually the third largest poultry and second largest hog producer in the country. Additionally, they're the largest harvester of sweet potatoes and a leading producer of soybeans, peanuts, and several other commodities. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has ordered that all crops and commodities impacted by water from rivers, creeks, or streams cannot enter the human food channels. So as we lead into the U.S. holiday season, the cost for Thanksgiving staples could absolutely increase.
All right, so let's talk about wildfires. Now, the wildfires in California will have an effect outside of the wine industry. How does that affect the price of going out to eat, let's say?
Yeah, Jim, simply put, your wonderful glass of wine will likely cost you some more. 2017 was especially devastating for the wine industry in California. Luckily, most of the grapes were harvested last year, but fire and smoke were shattering to many wineries. Average price per ton of wine grapes increased over 8%, and some of that price increase has been passed on to the consumer, unfortunately.
With all due respect to the wine industry and the wineries out there that lost everything, I mean, when you go out and pay for a glass of wine these days, I mean, you're almost paying half the bottle.
I know.
How much higher can they go?
Yeah, that's
right?
That's a good point, Jim. Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about heat waves in the U.S. and Europe, what they're going to do to the beef industry and other businesses that are, related to cattle raising. So how long does it take for all of this to actually go into effect? A month, 6 months, a year? When do we see that rise in prices?
Well, I mean, clearly, as you suggested, beef prices could increase and could increase substantially. Let's look at the major drought that happened in Texas in 2011. This caused pastures to dry out and led to the biggest hit to cattle production in 60 years. Beef prices spiked over 5%, and we really didn't see that impact until a year later. So there's no doubt, as you suggested, it can take some time for extreme weather impacts to work its way to your wallet.
All right, some great. I would love to go on with Clark here. This is some great stuff.
Well, maybe we can get him back.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back. Yeah. Clark Schweers, thank you very much for talking to us. Obviously, just because natural disasters happen close to home or not near you, very, very far away, they do impact your wallet.
Effects. Yeah, of course, head of the Forensic Insurance and Recovery Practice at BDO in Washington, D.C. Chris, let's go coast to coast.
All right, time now for your Tuesday morning weather headlines. More than 60 families living in a North Carolina apartment complex are being evicted due to damage from Hurricane Florence. Water, mold, and asbestos have reached a majority of homes at the Glen Apartments in Wilmington. Residents there were given notices Saturday saying their leases were terminated due to unrepairable damage.
Your personal stuff that you have a routine for, you're losing. You looking like, okay, where do I go? How do I begin from this? It's like, it was very emotional.
And according to a North Carolina statute, it's perfectly legal to terminate the leases. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the apartment complex issued a statement which reads in part, quote, "We are taking every measure to help our residents who can no longer live at the Glen, including refunding any rent payments made since the hurricane struck Wilmington and returning security deposits in full. Transitional sheltering assistance has been approved by FEMA to help people find short or long-term housing." And a forest fire is closing in on a village in Italy this morning. Flames are raging in the hills above Cauchy. Around 500 people have fled their homes. Strong winds gusting to 50 miles an hour, giving firefighters a lot of trouble. And Jim, that's damaging. Scary times there in Italy.
Yeah, we show fire, flood. I mean, we have it all here. Let's talk about today and tomorrow. Pretty active across the Great Lakes in the Northeast, right, with that trough swinging through and the cold front. That takes whatever's off the Carolina coast out. So we're not going to have to worry about that in terms of a tropical feature. Now, look at what is behind that. 64 in Florida, 63 in Chicago. Oh, just beautiful. And all this oozes down into Texas. So here's your beautiful day on Thursday in Dallas. Actually, Thursday and Friday look pretty good on the Dallas area. Unfortunately, for the southeast, you'll notice that front only gets so far. All right, because the upper support swings up to the north, and all of a sudden the atmosphere is responding now to a new trough that'll be developing across the west, and that's going to bring a few showers back into the Midwest. So by the time we get into Saturday, this is going to be kind of a dirty high. There's going to be a lot of cloud cover, some showers, potentially even a thunderstorm down to the south. But the front will stick around and unfortunately keep the southeast on the showery side. Places like Atlanta, Birmingham. Atlanta, though, if you look at September, it's been pretty dry. So it'd be nice to get a little wet weather.
chaos as raging waters sweep away cars, torrential rains pounding Tunisia. Look at this flash flooding. How many cars is that? All right. Well, there was at least 4 people that died in this. Parts of North Africa got, the North African country, I should say, got 8 inches of rain on Saturday. It's half of its yearly rainfall. Listen to that. Half of its yearly rainfall in one day. Just tremendous there. Just tremendous. Well, we're going to keep going around the world here and talk about a typhoon in the Western Pacific with Chris.
Yes, Super Typhoon Trami, as it barrels across the West Pacific, has its eyes set on Japan, hopefully weakening before doing so. It does look weaker this morning. However, let's look at what it looked like on the visible satellite yesterday. Very symmetrical. This thing is a monster. And as Jim alluded to, the eye here in the center of the storm is about 35 miles across. That's pretty significant here for this powerful of a typhoon, Jim.
It is. And you know what? Speed sometimes is your friend when you're a super typhoon, because you get a nice fresh supply of warm ocean water. Look at what happened to this thing. All right? It's sitting. I mean, if you look at the crosshairs of this lat lawn right here, it's just sitting there. All right? So it's upwelling, and it's obviously really collapsing some of the deep, deep convection, which, of course, keeps this. This is now a 4, and it's dropping rapidly, especially given what we see. But the upwelling that's going on there with the cooler water is definitely helping to weaken this typhoon. It's still large. It's still going to move on off toward the northwest, and it will eventually find its way, believe it or not, into our weather pattern. If you've ever taken a 10-foot rope and you kind of sling it like that, you know it sends a wave down that rope, right? Now, it's resonated out, depending on how hard you do it when you kind of slap that rope, but that's kind of what happens in the atmosphere. We're going to sling this thing through the pattern into the Westpac, and that may eventually determine just how cold the early cold outbreak is going to be for us in the United States. So, again, we'll see how much is left of this by the time it heads up toward Japan. But here you see 98L, which will not be Florence again. The good news is we, too, have a trough of low pressure that is coming to the east that will eventually lift this up and out. The center of it will never come on shore. Showers will, but the center will not. You can see some of those showers moving in now, in and around Morehead City and Ocracoke. We're fine in Wilmington. I don't think this is going to be enough to exacerbate any existing flood problems. But if you're one of those homeowners, and I know there are many of you that are trying to clean out your house and gut the carpet and get the sheetrock off the walls, it's humid out. And this is not helping. This is the pattern here with this tropical air and this tropical system that is keeping us locked in. So, again, 98L, a few showers. Not everybody gets wet, thank goodness, as a result of this. And then you'll notice those even taper off as we get into tonight. But we will get there's going to be more rain with the front than there will be with Invest 98L. I hope that makes sense. All right, so at G-Dime Weather and his brilliant self decided to take all the action that's going on here and now superimpose the probabilities of development over these areas. So this area to watch here, which is interesting, gets sucked into the subtropical storm, which we know, of course, as Leslie. And notice how that moves up north and then heads to the west. So, Steph, what once was a subtropical system goes extratropical and then tropical again, potentially, just like the perfect storm. The good news is it's not sitting off the coast of New England. It's sitting out here in the mid-Atlantic.
I mean, it's been wacky, Jim. We've had is it 5 or 6 subtropical storms this year?
Yeah, 6.
6, right? I'm losing count now at this point, which is unheard of. This is not unheard of. Seeing snow in Arapahoe Basin, A Basin, Do You Want to Build a Snowman? Cue the Frozen soundtrack. It was falling here in Colorado on Monday. Loveland also seeing a little snow, though I don't know if I should say Loveland and A Basin. I mean, like, all these are competing. I mean, I know they all love each other.
Resorts, yeah.
Right, I know they all love each other, but, you know, it's like saying Florida State and Florida. I mean, you just, you know, let's just not. Okay, let's talk about that cooler air. Obviously coming into Colorado, Montana, Wyoming. Everything is going to be dipping south and east. So the jet stream separates the cool from the warm. This allows the cold air to go south, and we are going to continue to see this dig in. That's what it looks like in the upper levels. This is what it looks like at the surface. So remember, I always talk about how the atmosphere looks like a hamburger. What I just showed you is around like the tomato layer when you're building a burger. This is the bottom bun. This is how it's reflected down to the surface. That's what we say in meteorology. So same things, kind of doing a little bit of different things, but related. Can you find the front? I mean, not too hard to find here, right? Look at Chicago versus Minneapolis. Look at St. Louis versus Sioux Falls. Temperatures, only one aspect that you look for when you're finding a front. But yeah, it's going to get down to Kansas, But then it's also going to get down into Oklahoma, and it's going to get down into Texas as well. So tonight, 40s and 50s, and then watch that cold front sweep all the way down. Lone Star State, you're not going to be so lonely because you're going to be sharing all of the cold air. I mean, 60s into West Texas, even Dallas, 71. But as you can see, does not sweep all the way through the state. This is what happens in the South, right? Like the northern half of the state gets it, not so much the southern half. Oklahoma City, 81. That's our average high. We're going to be at 61 on Wednesday. Then we kind of moderate a bit. But, Chris, we also get that sun out. That's going to help.
I still can't believe 50s in Texas
I know.
tomorrow. Unreal. All right, we'll still head here on AMHQ. More than 40 million under the threat of severe weather today, when dangerous storms could bring the risk of isolated tornadoes. And after the storms, the cool down, where fall will be front and center as summer gets stage right.
Florence, of course, a name nobody in the Carolinas wants to hear. Why today's rain has some remnants of that deadly storm. Jim.
All right, 43 million people in the path of severe storms today. That doesn't mean everyone's going to get them, but we'll show you where the ingredients could come together for a little spin. Chris.
And say it ain't snow. Fall isn't just bringing the beautiful leaves, but it's also bringing this. Yes, snow. AMHQ starts right now.
Good morning and welcome back into AMHQ. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams alongside meteorologists Jim Cantori and Chris Bruin. More than a week after Florence, I-40 has finally reopened in both directions. The bad news, one lane going west is still closed because of water, but you can see the extent of the flooding. I mean, can you believe on the left-hand side, this Interstate 40, you can kind of get a gist on the right, but on the left, that's the one that kind of blows my mind. I-95 also has reopened, but hundreds of roads around North Carolina still remain closed. And yes, Jim, we had 20, 30 inches of rain, but it was mainly from those swollen creeks, swollen rivers, swollen lakes, that type of thing that caused all of this flooding.
Yeah, and the fact that it's not one of these things that's a steep slope and it's going to drain right out quickly. It is oozing out, unfortunately. All right, some really wet weather has moved into the Northeast. Back where we had really a beautiful weekend in some parts of New England for sure. Look at New York right now. Ooh, or I should say try and look at New York right now, okay? Philadelphia as well, low clouds in through there. Most of the rain's in New York, and these low ceilings are prompting some issues there. Pockets of moderate to heavy rainfall, by the way, are going to dump 2 to 3 inches of rain, 1 to 3 over the whole area. And that means certainly the Braves and Mets are in jeopardy tonight. I think Syndergaard is going to be pitching for the Mets tonight at Citi Field, or he's going to try to. We could have a washout tonight, though, at Citi Field. All right, so let's talk about this. It's really an interesting pattern because right now the warm front kind of goes all the way down into western North Carolina and then comes back up, if you will, just to the south of New York City. All right, and then the cold front is way back into the Midwest. So you've got this warm, moist, humid air to the south of the warm front, and this old, what we call Canadian polar air, which is drained down through the Appalachians and up into New England. So our temperatures, kind of on the back side of this, are kind of cool. Temperatures are in the 40s right now. It's 45 in Worcester and rain coming down. And if you've ever been outside in 45 and rain versus like 65 or 75, there's a big difference in what you have on, right? You kind of need that layer underneath the raincoat, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, it's in the 30s in Maine this morning. Beautiful, crisp fall morning in Maine. Poughkeepsie right now is 43 or 48 degrees with the rain coming down. 40. It's raining in New York City as well. Scranton's raining. You can kind of get an idea of where that front is. By the way, speaking of New York City, 36-minute delays because of the low ceilings and the rain in New York City. Weather is wind, as they're calling it. There's actually a heck of an east wind, too, just to the north of that warm front, which is where New York City sits at the present time. So here's the ridge axis. This is not the kind of weather that you want, by the way, for perfect fall color in the apple. You want to get into that trough. You want to get into that nice high pressure, those cool, crisp nights and those warm, sunny days, not hot and humid days like we have here. But look at the model just cranking out the rain from this morning through the afternoon. The warm front kind of sits here. It's going to take a while to make its way up through New England. As a matter of fact, it'll come through on the west side before it'll come through on the south side, which is interesting. So if it's here now, it comes all the way up around New York State and then eventually up into northern New England. But because we'll just continue to repeat the rainfall, essentially from the Mass Pike into northeast PA, we have a chance for localized flooding here today, Chris. 1 to 3 inches of rain, an absolute soaker with low clouds today for the northeast.
Blah. I think that's a good way to describe the forecast. And we had strong storms in the south yesterday. Look at this video. A possible tornado tearing through Cannon County, Tennessee yesterday. Witnesses say they saw a tornado in the area about an hour southeast of Nashville. Several homes were damaged. This is a trampoline we're looking at. Look at that. That was tossed into a tree. And Steph, we've got more severe storms pushing through the Midwest today. We could see similar sights in some isolated areas.
I think we could. And here's a look at where we have the possibility for thunderstorms. Now, what's happening is we have ingredients for severe weather, but they're not super high leveled and they're also a little bit off kiltered. So it's kind of like when you're baking a cake. If you don't have the precise ingredients and add them at the right time, then it just doesn't come out, how you expect it to. So the possibility here of wind damage, our Torcons are 3s. We have the warm, moist air, so that's one ingredient that we have. But right now, it's already cloudy and it's already raining. So that kind of muddles the atmosphere a little bit here and kind of takes some of the energy out of it. But if we had a day where it's just like crisp, clear skies, just banging down on this thing and warm temperatures, it'd be a little different. Indianapolis, this is just your first round. All right, we still have to get this front to come through. And you'll see, as it comes through, we have the rain. There's a few. Listen, one of these little nuggets right here, that could mess your day up. It certainly could. But I just don't think we're going to see widespread damage. The forcing gets in a little bit later in the day. And the winds from the jet stream are a little bit farther back, a little too far removed from our surface feature. But Indianapolis, you're going to get that second round into the evening hours, and some of those could be boomers. And today's threat, Jim, is, like I mentioned, it's just a little bit later in the day.
Yeah, and like you said about the ingredients. You ever watch any of these cooking shows?
All the time, love them.
Where they just like micromanage. The chicken was just a hair over. I mean,
yes,
that's what it is.
It makes a difference.
It's really precision here in the atmosphere. So Detroit, 69 degrees, low cloud. You can see the tops of the buildings kind of cut off there, but kind of a neat. Now I don't know if that's just my monitor or if that's the sunrise color that we're getting. The purple kind of pink hue there. Yeah. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, no, I think that's the sun. I don't think it's your monitor. I think
that's a pretty sweet little rise you got going on there, Detroit. All right. Hey, guess what? Some of these storms today, regardless of when and where they develop, we know there are going to be multiple rounds, right? They can produce winds of 60 miles per hour. Detroit, you don't need any more rain, though. We have 6¼ surplus, 6¼ inches surplus for the year so far. So we'll take the nice sunrise, Chris, though.
Well, if we get red sky and morning, sailors what?
Take
warning. I think we got a good forecast for that today, too.
Yeah,
so maybe a little hint of red in those obscure clouds covering the city of Detroit. Showers pushing through, but the strong storms will be later this afternoon. After 6, 7, 8 o'clock, they really start to come in with that front that we'll see a push across parts of the Great Lakes and Midwest. You can see at times. Now, not everyone getting in on the strong storms. However, that chance is there for everybody, so keep that in mind. Overnight threat, and then by tomorrow morning, things are winding down. We're clearing out. We're also cooling down. It's not just Detroit. It's areas further south. Already a messy, messy start here in Indianapolis. More heavy rain working through southern Indiana, pushing into the Hoosier State, right into the heart of the city by lunchtime. You might not want to leave the office for lunch break. And then by the afternoon, we're going to continue with the heavy rainfall. A little bit of a break maybe for the ride home from work and school, and then tonight it's going to get stormy, and these could be quite strong, especially if we get a little bit of sunshine there from the morning storms to our second round, which will be later this afternoon, really into the overnight hours. And in Louisville, Kentucky, this has been super wet. Look at this, currently the wettest year to date with over 54 inches of rain. And the wettest year for ever standing, 68 inches. That was in 2011. We still have 3 months to go. We could certainly do that. And we're going to see at least an inch or two overnight in the next 24 hours of storms in the forecast. For Chicago, we got a big baseball game here at the Cubs. We are going to see storms, unfortunately. The game starts at 8 p.m. Look at the arrival of this line, Steph. Not good time. So rain delay, poncho, umbrellas, whatever you're allowed to take to the stadium, you might want to think about taking.
Yeah, sometimes they do, the game will go on to 11, 12 o'clock at night type of a thing, right? The worst. Well, the nation's capital, I should say, will see some of that heavy rain into tomorrow. As far as today, I mean, look, it looks gloomy, and the rain we're going to get, that's not what's causing our flooding concern here. It's high tide that's creating the threat along the Potomac River and also the Chesapeake Bay. That coastal flooding is going to last into tomorrow with some showers, and Jim, also, again, that chance for some storms to pop up. It's just going to be messy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those will be along the cold front. So if you look at where we are today, all right, I'm throwing tomorrow's outlook on there with today's surface analysis. So you got to get rid of all this old, we call CP air, all right, this Canadian air that's come on down here. So by tomorrow, the cold front is here now at this point, and your warm front is kind of stretching up into Canada and getting up this way. So now this kind of puts this whole area in the warm sector. So it's all about the jet stream tomorrow. Where's that jet stream going to be in relation to this warm sector? We know we're going to have moisture because that's going to come in behind the warm front. It's actually going to come from the top down. A lot of you this morning, like Worcester, 45 and raining, 48 in Pittsfield. Nasty stuff. We don't have a ton of instability, even though we're going to get into the warm sector across the Northeast. But we've got just a little hint, all right, of the kind of the bottom part of this little jet core that's coming across southern New England and eastern New York. You look at the low-level winds, they'll be out of the south. 850 or 5,000 feet. You got a little turning there, so there's a little angle, little spin potentially out of the atmosphere. You can see where the cold front is. That's back in here. So we're definitely in that warm sector. 3 out of 10 chance, by the way, eastern New York, western New England. Not everybody gets them, but some of the storms that do go severe may have a little spin with them. Certainly, to me, it looks more like a damaging wind threat, if that. But you'll notice what we don't have tomorrow that we have today. We don't have a lot of stuff that's out ahead of the main front. All right, today that's what's happening in Indiana, it's what's happening in Ohio, what's happening in Illinois. So at least from this model, one would say, hey, it looks like our main action, if it's going to be severe, is going to be out ahead of the cold front. But again, this is a long way out still, 24 to 36 hours before we get there. Chris, over to you.
All right, well, the 3 rivers that converge in Georgetown, South Carolina will start delivering floodwaters today. Good part of the coastal community could be under siege for days. New this morning, officials haven't issued a mandatory evacuation order, but they're urging 8,000 people to leave their homes. Temporary berms line highways in Georgetown. Stores are barricaded behind sandbags. The South Carolina National Guard is ready for the rush of water. If floods cut off the bridges that span the rivers, a floating ribbon bridge will serve as a backup.
Volume of water coming from the north area along the Waccamaw River and the Great Petey River going to converge in the Winyah Bay as they try to go out to sea.
Next door, traffic is flowing again on I-95 in North Carolina.
Today is squeegee day. Get the water out of the store.
Businesses are ripping up soggy carpet and cutting out wet drywall. The owner of the Noose Sports Shop is adding up his losses.
The numbers are climbing. It'll be somewhere north of $1 million, we're pretty sure.
Water still surrounds entire neighborhoods in Lumberton. Homes in Kinston are isolated islands. The Lumber River is falling, but remains in major flood stage. Several hundred people are waiting out the river at Red Cross shelters. The governor is pleading with people to sit tight.
Please, please stay away from flooded roads. We don't want to lose any more lives.
Well, Governor Cooper announced 2 additional deaths on Monday. That brings the total in North Carolina to 35. Add in Virginia and South Carolina, and Florence is responsible for 46 deaths overall. And unfortunately, with the nice weather we've been seeing since Florence, the rivers are still extremely high. I mean, catastrophic flooding, still dealing with it downstream, and it's just beginning in some cities here in South Carolina. Look at all the rivers in major flood stage. That's what that purple triangle represents. And it takes time for these waters just to drain out into the Atlantic. Here around Conway, take a look at the Waccamaw River. Currently now just over 21 feet, expected to get up to 22 feet. That won't likely happen till tomorrow. Notice how this stays pretty steady here in major flood stage well through the end of the week and into the weekend. So it's going to take time before that water really starts to recede. Speaking of tropical systems bringing rainfall, the record for the state of South Carolina was broken by Florence. The old record was nearly 17.5 inches with Beryl in 1994. We shattered that with picking up over 23 inches there in parts of lower South Carolina. And Jim, it's hard to see the sights. It's beautiful with the sunshine now, but it's hard to see the devastation still brought on by that significant river flooding.
Yeah, I mean, it would just be so nice to get a nice, cool air mass in through here to help everybody out. I know the cleanup is slow and it's still humid. And then, of course, all you have to do is look at the satellite picture and go, oh, well, that thing's got some DNA that's linked to Florence. It won't be Florence if they name it or whatnot. And if you're lucky, the center may skim the Outer Banks. But most of the weather, thank goodness, is east of the center and northeast of the center. So with a system that's going to move north and then east, that keeps it off the coast. We're going to watch this trough influence 98L over the next couple of days. So again, some of these showers offshore will kind of rotate onshore. And it's like I said, not everybody gets a super washout in through here, but we'll watch these because they're tropical downpours. And that, in addition to the easterly wind that's going on here, will create a very high rip current risk. So dangerous day to be in the water, certainly across the Outer Banks. We're going to have some showers and some thunderstorms that are going to roll on through. And really, I think our main threat time will be through about midnight tonight. All right, you're going to get some heavier rain, I think, with the cold front coming south tomorrow. And then the fact that it sits there, it's going to kind of sit over us and stall as we head in toward the weekend. That's got me more concerned than 98L, certainly for this area. So an inch for some. Rip current risk is high here. Strong easterly wind just pushing that water all the way into the Outer Banks. All right, Chris, what are people sharing with us this morning?
Yeah, we love it when you send in your pictures and videos of social media. This is video of a storm cloud moving into Leflore County, Mississippi, Monday evening. Take a look at that. Look at the ominous skies there at sunset. Leflore County is about 2 hours north of Jackson, Mississippi, where we saw certainly some unsettled weather. Staying in Mississippi, check out this double rainbow looking east in Tupelo, Mississippi. We thank Darren on Facebook for this picture. And again, how rare is it to see the full-fledged rainbow and then this full secondary rainbow, that double rainbow, which is just a reflection, by the way, of the primary rainbow. So the colors are reversed in that secondary rainbow. And check out this. We've gotten so many harvest moon photos. They've been impressive across not only the country, but around the globe. This one's one of the better ones that we've seen in Washington State. Take a look at that full moon there. Look how bright it is. You can see the peak. We think that's Mount Baker, but it may be one of the other ones. This was sent in by Randy. The harvest moon is a full moon that occurs near the autumnal equinox. Sometimes it can happen in October as well.
Do you notice how bright it is, though, in that
yeah,
picture?
it's almost like twilight. It never got fully dark.
So bright.
I love it when that happens.
I guarantee you someone will let us know.
Maybe some people had a hard time sleeping because it's so bright, you know.
Possibly.
All right.
Well, the first full week of fall, it's here and right on cue. The cool down is on the way where temperatures can take a 20-degree tumble and help usher in those crisp colors. Plus, raging water creating total chaos. How much rain triggered this event? Look at the cars. And we're going to take it to New York City where we are seeing rain. It will not be to that extent, but definitely wet, soggy, and a little bit on the cooler side as you walk out the door. We'll be right back for our last hour. Release the hounds. There are 5 therapy dogs now working at Miami International Airport as part of a new program to provide passengers with stress relief during peak travel. The best part about it is that, well, that's not the best part about it, but one of the great parts about it is the name. They are calling it the Miami Hound Machine. Cue a little, come on, baby, shake your body, do that conga, you know. They help people decompress after delays, missed planes, that type of a thing, which I think is good because they have all those security dogs walking around and you're not allowed to touch them. And we all kind of just like go for that dog and we're like, oh, I'm sorry, just kidding. You know, the ones that are sniffing and stuff, you're not allowed to touch them. So I think this will be nice and helpful. Though, watch if you're eating. A lot of people sit and eat in the airport in those chairs.
Oh, yeah, you watch your food. They're trained, but they're also dogs, right? Okay, so maybe you're getting licked by your dog in the face this morning. Well, if you're going to be traveling, airports are going to have some issues, especially here in Chicago. It'll be more of a late day threat, more like late afternoon, evening flights. Those could be the ones impacted by turbulence and delays. Cleveland, we could see it really afternoon, morning. New York City already seen some of those delays, likely to increase as we see more volume and get into the afternoon. A pretty soggy day here. Boston, the rain's held off for now. Hopefully you can get to work before it arrives because by lunchtime we're expecting those showers pushing right into New England, and that will continue even for the PM rush. So wet roads here, not only in Boston, but across New England. Jim?
All right, let's talk about our severe weather threat today because, of course, it's just like we have in the spring. You have that transition season where it starts to cool off. The jet stream gets a little bit faster in the northern latitudes, but we still have an abundance of warm, moist air. It's the other way around, obviously, in the spring where our jet stream starts to retreat a little bit. But you'll notice our Torcon index is sitting right there in northern Indiana today. You know, if it was me, you can draw kind of an ISO line. Where is that 3 exactly? What does that area include? It includes a good part of west central Indiana. It includes parts of Ohio as well. Then the 2, all right, then the 1, back in 3. So there's really kind of an ISO line part of all this. But how do we get to the 3? Why isn't our number a 5? Why isn't it 10? Why is it so low today? And what's going to create our tornado index? So let's talk a little bit about this. Of course, you need moisture out there when you throw the atmosphere up. Let's just take Fort Wayne. This is kind of a good midpoint of where we have our Torcon numbers is 3. And we've got decent moisture. We know we've got tropical air. It's humid this morning in Fort Wayne. You know, we're in the warm sector, if you will. Interestingly enough, though, enough dry air, I think, above 12,000 feet to 20,000, we may actually have a hail risk in there if we can get the big updrafts. And what gives us the big updrafts? The instability. There's plenty of that. But you know what? We will have multiple rounds of thunderstorms today in Fort Wayne. So we're going to use up a lot of this instability. I don't think we're going to get a point in the day where we get very unstable. I think we're just going to be unstable all day, and these storms, these showers, these thunderstorms will roll through and kind of tap into this instability. But should we get into the very unstable air, guess what? We're going to be able to tap into that and maybe get some hail out of this. So something to watch as we go on through the afternoon. All right, so what about wind shear? What about change in wind direction with height? What about change in speed with height? There's 2 different kinds, you remember? Our winds today at Fort Wayne are going to be generally out of the south. As I told you, we're in the warm sector. We've got that moisture. You'll notice there isn't a super change as we go from surface up to 8,000 feet, but there's a change in speed. All right, look at the surface, 9 versus 38 miles an hour at 8,000 feet. Then you go up to 20,000 feet, which is what they call 0 to 6 kilometer. All right, you got 50 miles per hour there. So you can get a nice little horizontal tube in that should you be able to tap into some of that instability. Something to watch today, Steph. Again, I don't think it's going to be a big outbreak, but a few of these storms will mostly produce damaging wind if they go severe, could also tornado.
Only takes 1, though. It only takes 1. Yeah. All right, not even October 1st, and guess what? It's snowing. In Colorado, this is Loveland. Saw a few flakes yesterday. A Basin also a few flakes. I love it in slow-mo, though. Isn't that always fun? Loveland averages about 41 inches of snow. Of course, those higher elevations are going to get much more than that. So where are we seeing that fall cool down? Where are we going to be having temperatures enough to support the snow? Well, first of all, look over the last 24 hours. Denver, Colorado, we are 22 degrees colder. This is where that front is slicing through. So behind it, temperatures are dropping. And you can see it again. This is just another perspective. Our temperatures right now. Okay, so that front is just going to continue to progress eastbound. That's what's happening at the surface. Let's go let's move higher up in the atmosphere and show you that jet stream, how it dips down. That allows the cold air to go south. So as far as that dips down, the cold air can get. This is how it's reflected to the surface. We just draw things differently depending on what layer you're at in the atmosphere. Cold air is going to get down into places like Texas. Then there's our reinforcements. So we're just going to continue. The northern tier is just going to continue to get it. Now, look at this. Here's where our front is. Watch the cold air drop southeast. Oh, there's our front. It's moving. You see the contours? It's moving. Look at that coming on through. And basically, we're going to be in the 60s for our highs, Chris, tomorrow.
Award-winning forecast right there. Well, coming up next on AMHQ, severe storms putting more than 40 million on alert today. Coming up, when you can expect the storms to strike and where the threat is headed for tomorrow. And some drivers will have a tough time getting going this morning where these cars ended up stuck in a highway of water. Steph?
All right, but first it's time now for your quick bite here from Jimmy John's, and we're going to show you the threat for severe weather in the Midwest today. Again, Jim was mentioning, mainly going to be light stuff, but all it takes is one, right? Tropical downpours, I'm talking tornadoes along the East Coast, but then behind it, that's when we get the relief. Not only in the temperatures, but dew points. The drop in dew points makes a significant difference as well.
This quick bite brought to you by Jimmy John's. Order Jimmy John's sandwich delivery today. Jimmy John's, where fresh and fast meet.
Okay, ready? Here we go. I got this, Jim.
by all means.
Yeah. Miami's on the scene, just in case you didn't know it. Do you remember the lyrics to the song?
Nope.
Okay, good. With your rack top
there we
down
go.
so your hair can blow, right?
This is Ice Ice Baby, right?
Yes.
This was only a one-hit wonder? They only did one hit?
Not
No
very,
way.
not
One
very
hit
icy
wonder.
in South
But it was a
Beach.
big hit.
Oh my
was
God,
so
it
big.
was
It's
so
still a big hit.
and so controversial, by the way. Remember, my song goes dun 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 dun. You don't remember because they were saying he stole the beat from, and I'm blanking on the other song. David Bowie, that's what it was. Thank you. So, of course, home of Vanilla Ice. By the way, he comes from my hometown of Wellington, Florida. He still lives there, I believe, because I have friends who run into him at Starbucks. And definitely not a day to roll with your 5.0 with your rag top down so your hair can blow. The girlies don't stand by waiting just to say hi. Did you stop? No, I just rolled by, kept on, pursuing to my next stop. I could do the whole thing.
You could do the whole thing.
I think girls of my generation can literally sing every lyric to that song.
I can't believe they only did one hit.
He's one guy, Vanilla Ice.
No, but one hit wonder.
Okay, well, we'll look it up. He had other songs, but this was the only one that was super popular.
Wow, that's interesting. All right. Obviously, it's World One Hit Wonder Day. It's also World Dream Day, according to DreamsCloud.com. If you could dream about tornadoes, it could mean that you are in a destructive relationship. Did you know that?
Oh no, what does it say about all of us as meteorologists? If you're dreaming about rainbows, it implies hope and the end of bad times. And Jim, one place that had bad times is parts of the Carolinas when it comes to the rain.
Those people are having nightmares
Yeah.
about the rain, okay? And the flooding there, more flooding on the way from Florence. Emergency officials took a look certainly at how high the rivers already are in Conway, South Carolina. Remember, this is the area where the Waccamaw is already coming up. Still, it has not crested yet, and it will stay up in major flood stage through next week at least. So we're talking about 22 feet. That could be higher than Hurricanes Matthew and Floyd. As a matter of fact, it will be, Steph. Northeast getting some tropical downpours today, but certainly no flood.
No,
Or at least
well, I mean, there's like that possibility in the flood-prone areas, but nothing,
flash
obviously.
flood, but not an overall.
Yeah, there you go. And also because of the high tides, you know,
Right.
so that's also part of the problem. So this is moisture, by the way, that's left over, has some DNA of Florence. Let me just do a circle on it here for you, that right there. Just going to clip the Carolinas, but otherwise, really the moisture coming in off the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. And the fronts are it's just really messy. If you look at, we make the graphics pretty, so they're, you know, easy to understand. But if you look at a true, like, nitty-gritty, down and dirty surface map, it's a mess out there. We just have multiple little entities. Here's one, and then you have these systems, and you have our front back here going on. And it's causing just a gloomy start to the day in the Northeast. You have sometimes a hard time getting started when it's like this. You get in your car, opposed to a day where you could like roll the windows down and, you know, you got the sunshine beating on you. It really makes a difference, right? And unfortunately, this is starting early. I know this is why a lot of people don't like to live in the Northeast, because of that gloom during, you know, the winter months and whatnot. We have it today, and then, by the way, we're going to stay in it for tomorrow. There is that possibility for some showers and flooding again. Around D.C., it's those higher tides that are going to cause the problems. Philly, we have storms here. Of course, we could all sing, you know, I'm sorry, I've not got enough sleep lately. Will
West
Smith,
Side,
thank you.
I forget how that goes.
Oh, man, I need a nap big time. Anyhow, temperatures are warm in Philly, and Jim, it's going to get a lot cooler this weekend.
Yes, it is. Philly's going to see the front, unlike areas of the south. Chicago, you're going to see the front. Detroit, you're going to see Indianapolis, but we got to get through all this today with showers and thunderstorms. Some of these will be severe. Again, damaging winds are overall threat, but there's a chance we could get a little weak tornado in this. It's certainly possible, okay? Look at this, Indianapolis. Look what's coming down the road. Carbondale, I mean, all this is moving on across. This is what I was talking about. You'll have multiple rounds of storms. We've already had the wet weather move through, and then we got this to move through. But after this, could we, in fact, get into a period where the clouds break up? We get maybe a little bit of instability in through here. So let's see what the model does. You can see where the warm, that's perfect. Who did that analysis? That's perfect analysis this morning. Thank you very much. Looking at showers and thunderstorms, all this heading on off to the north and east. You notice a few stragglers here down along the Ohio and the Mississippi rivers, but here's the front. The front's still way back here across Iowa. That comes in. Here we are now at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Could this be the beginning here in the warm sector of our action? Or is our severe threat going to be along the cold front as we get into tonight? This is the area to keep an eye on, I think. Indianapolis up to Fort Wayne, over to Lima, Ohio. Chris, over to you.
All right, Jim. Well, behind that front, you get brutally cold air, at least relatively speaking. And compared to how warm it has been, we're talking below average temperatures. You're going to have one push that we're seeing already begin in the Dakotas. That's going to dive well into Texas. And behind that, that's that second push. And that one's really going to bring some of the coldest air of the season thus far. We'll take a look at the temperatures here, because by Friday, we're talking highs in the 40s for a place like Billings, Montana. That's 20 to 25 degrees below average, 46 for your high. And Rapid City, South Dakota, that runs nearly 30 degrees below what we would expect for this time of year. It's not just afternoon highs. Look at the morning lows for Saturday morning. 26 International Falls below freezing in Billings, Casper, and many other cities across the northern plains. And on top of that, Steph, we're likely going to see some first big snows here for the northern Rockies, including the Bighorns and Absarokas.
Well, still ahead on AMHQ, they may look harmless, but leaves can actually cause you to start slipping and sliding on the road. Some say they're as slippery as ice. So the danger is that the fall foliage leaves behind, and snow long to summer. Who's getting a taste of winter a little early? It's all coming up here on AMHQ. Playground. North Carolina Department of Transportation dubbing this week Recovery Week. Some of the 300-plus roads still closed in the state get ready to reopen, including Highway 70. Flooding from the Neuse River is receding, so that's allowing for reduced lanes to be ready for traffic. And this is just a slow process. And, you know, a lot of these areas that were underwater, it's because they were near even just a creek that cause tremendous flooding, Chris. So it takes a minute for everything to kind of settle all back in.
I still can't believe the
fish
on the
highway on I-40. That was
Gosh, that's not going to smell very good either.
No, that's
going to be a massive cleanup. All right, let's talk about interstate travel further off towards the west, here into the south. We're talking through Alabama, south of Nashville. North of there, we have that threat for severe weather, especially into the Midwest. It's going to be scattered thunderstorms, especially later in the afternoon here, and rain moving right in off the Gulf. So these are going to be tropical downpours, heavy at times, pondy on the road, make it very difficult to see out the windshield. Already seen some showers. We had some very heavy downpours overnight here in northeast Alabama, northwest Georgia. Trying to work into the Atlanta metro, not really having much progress, so maybe a low clouds, though. Better chances for storms as we go into your afternoon. Notice how they really start to pop 3, 4 o'clock. So coming home from the bus stop could be a little stormy. Scattered showers continuing to ruin beach plans here along the Emerald Coast. Jim, Steph?
All right, it's that time of the year when taking a trip to see the changing colors of fall can be a great idea, but it comes with some concerns, especially when it's wet.
Yeah, the falling leaves create trouble on the roads. Meteorologist Jen Carfagno explains why it could be like driving on ice.
Let's talk about travel. You know, whether you're going back and forth from work or driving to actually go get a view of that great fall color, you know the weather is always a factor, even on a sunny day. So we're going to talk travel because in the fall there's a complicating factor, and that is the leaves. Let's take this car out into reality, or augmented reality, and talk about how the weather impacts your travel. Now, even when there is no weather falling from the sky on dry conditions, it takes about 80 feet to stop your car if you're driving at 45 miles per hour. And that, of course, is dependent on what kind of tire tread you have, what kind of road conditions they're like, but still 80 feet. Now let's factor in the weather. And, you know, when you've got these great leaves on the trees, you know the color's gorgeous, but all of a sudden they're going to come down and they'll cover up the roadway. They'll cover up any potholes or any bad road conditions that are out there. And also when it starts raining, now we got some complications. So the rain falls, you've got your wipers on, you've got your headlights on, of course, if your wipers are on, and now the leaves start getting wet. And you've heard the saying that wet leaves are slippery as ice. Well, indeed they are. Why is ice slippery? Well, there's actually a film of water right on top of ice. Same thing happens actually with your car's tires on these leaves. So take a look. You've got the car's tires that are hitting the leaves, and the leaves are on top of the road. Leaves have a waxy coating on both sides of them, and that actually repels water. Trees get their water from their roots, right? Not from their leaves. So the waxy coating repels water. That makes leaves very slippery. And leaves slip on leaves. Leaves slip on the road. Your car's tire slips on the leaves. And when there's layers of these wet leaves, the slick factor is exponential. You try to brake on this, you see the swerve, right? All of a sudden, you more than double your stopping distance if you're traveling at 45 miles per hour. And that's not a clean stop, is it? So if you're traveling, even if it stops raining and you've got leaves on the road, you know that it takes hours for wet leaves to dry out. You need to slow down, both hands on the wheel. Make sure you have some good tire tread on your car, and make sure you stay vigilant, because even when it's not raining, when you've got leaves on the roads, it could be slick as ice, especially if they're wet.
I remember the back end of a 79 Chevrolet that I put a dent in one time that my dad reminded me of quite often. Yeah, because of the wet leaves on the road. So
I have a feeling that wasn't it. Chris, over to you.
All right. Well, it's coast to coast now for your Tuesday morning weather headlines. Soupy Gulf moisture is kicking up aggressive thunderstorms around the south. This one over northeastern Alabama. It got a little feisty late Monday. A rotating wall cloud like this indicates a tornado. You can see a funnel drop down, but no evidence it made it to the ground. There was also another cloud, Jim, in Alabama that wasn't a tornado, but you saw that rotating. Yeah, it's scary times. Well, a French fishing boat had rescued a sailor stranded in the Indian Ocean. Get this, a wild storm with 80-mile-an-hour winds and waves 5 stories high rolled his yacht last week. The accident left him trapped in a cabin for 4 days with a severe back injury. The rescue man was taking part in a around-the-world race. Sailors are not allowed to use modern technology. I didn't know that, Jim.
It's good that somebody got him, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
they
you need a way to contact them, certainly if something goes wrong out there, because you're at the mercy of the ocean. All right, so a couple of wet days in the Northeast. We'll have some severe thunderstorms. Damaging wind is our primary threat. We may have a tornado or two tomorrow as we take you into southern New England, eastern New York, mainly from the Mass-Pike on southward. Storms will be abundant across parts of the Tennessee Valley. A couple of wet days we'll put together for you. Chattanooga, by the way, 3.41 inches of rain yesterday. It's the most rain since you had last February. It's been a very dry month of September so far. All right, so on Thursday, look at Chicago. Oh, 70 degrees. It's going to be beautiful in St. Louis, Buffalo, even New York City, 69. So there's the air mass that comes in behind the front. But notice the front only gets so far. Not good news for the Carolinas. All right, this does not help dry you out at all down and through here. 68 chance of showers on Friday in the Northeast. Cloudy in Chicago. Unfortunately, there's a heck of a disturbance that's coming into the jet stream on the backside of it. So it's going to bring the warm, moist air back north. So even though we've still got that Canadian high pressure at the surface, it's going to be kind of cloudy and not the most perfect of weekend. There'll be a few showers and thunderstorms developing. And yes, in the south, we are stuck with the front once again. This one is not going to really help out the deep south or Florida. It's going to be very, very hot and very, very humid in Florida all weekend. Hopefully by November, Florida, we can get you a front. Steph, over to you.
All right. Well, coming up next, a trio of systems are brewing in the Atlantic. We'll have the latest on Invest 98L and how much rain is expected across the Carolinas. Plus, fall is making its presence known with not one, but 2 shots of cooler air. Stick around to see how low the temperatures will go and the coldest air that is moving in. And we want to take you now for a look at Chicago, courtesy of EarthCam. And, you know, this is just not a great day for us, but let me tell you, 69 degrees is going to be warmer than our high tomorrow. So enjoy the nice weather because chillier air is ahead. You'll be able to open the windows, clear out your house. It'll be great. Chaos as raging waters sweep away cars, multiple cars at that. This is in Tunisia. Flash flooding, I should say, leaving 4 people dead. Parts of the North African country got 8 inches of rain on Saturday. That is half of its yearly rainfall in one day. Half of its yearly rainfall in one day. We're going to keep it overseas for a minute here and talk about a big typhoon in the West Pac with Chris.
Yeah, Steph. Typhoon Chemi is causing major waves across the West Pacific. Now, it's starting to take that northward turn. It is weakening a little bit. Jim will explain a little bit more. But take a look at the visible satellite yesterday. I mean, this thing is a powerhouse. And as Jim mentioned, about 35 miles wide. That's a significantly large eye for this strong of a typhoon. I mean, almost equivalent to a very strong Category 4 here in the Atlantic Basin. Scary sight for sure as it nears Japan, Jim.
Yeah, the good news is, though, look at what's happening to it. All right, it's hardly moving. And sometimes that's our friend, because as you scrape off the warm water on the top, you pull up the colder water from the bottom. And this is a great loop that G9 Weather tweeted out yesterday. And you can see, I put that little yellow circle on that lat longitude cross. Everything's moving along. And then at about 6 o'clock last night, it stopped. So you're talking about something that's not, actually even before that. Yeah, about 6 o'clock last night, it stopped. So here we are like 12, 16 hours now going into this, where this thing has hardly moved at all from that spot. So it's upwelled, and you can see how it's weakened. So losing all these colors shows the weakening that we're talking about. So hopefully this will rapidly weaken, but it's going to stay strong enough and certainly big enough to impact potentially even Okinawa. So that's something we're going to watch. If you just take the center point, maybe it goes a little bit to the east. We'll see. I think a weaker storm would tend to go a little bit off to the east on this one. A weaker storm to the west. A stronger storm would stay a little bit onto the eastern side. 98L, let's talk about this. Now that the sun is up, we've actually got our first couple of visible pictures. 50% chance of developing, again, the center of this back in here. Let's take a look at it from a visible standpoint this morning, as now the visible is up. And you'll notice that that's an interesting little circulation center that's developing with this, all right? Also notice that some of the showers have actually worked their way onto the west side of this. So this has to make the turn pretty quick, because if it doesn't, that means we have more potential for heavier rain in eastern North and South Carolina. And obviously they need that like they need a hole in the head, right? So here come the showers rolling into Cape Hatteras and the Outer Banks. A lot of you are sunny here and dry at the moment, but we'll see how much of this actually makes its way in as we go on through the afternoon. Now, the more that wraps up, the heavier these showers are going to be. And what is forecast to be around an inch for mostly everybody, by the time we roll into tonight, could actually be a little bit more. So that's something new that we're keeping an eye on and through here. Right now, we're sticking around an inch for mostly everybody. All right, taking an eye on Old Kirk. Nice little, you've got a huge arc cloud right through there, kind of sticking out. That usually doesn't show a sign for development. We'll keep an eye on this, because the shear actually gets a little bit lighter as it works its way toward the islands. If I'm in the Windward Islands, I'm not taking my eye off it. As a matter of fact, that's the most interesting feature. And then you've got this subtropical low right through here, Steph, which is going to get energized, extratropical, and then maybe tropical again. And it will be, the L storm.
Yes, it will. Now we need turn and face the changes. I don't know if we
time to get into the
candy. I don't know if we have the rights to that song, but if we did, we'd be playing it here. Or maybe, do you want to build a snowman from Frozen? Well, you could start thinking about the snowman you're going to build in A Basin. This was on Monday, where we had a high of 45, but obviously cold enough snow. By the way, temperatures to snow, it could be like 60 or 70 degrees in snow depending on the dew point temperatures.
Oh, yeah.
I've
seen it snow in upper 50s.
There you go.
Yeah.
See?
It amazes me.
52.
I feel like
foam
in
balls.
in my meteorology book, I want to say it was like 70 degrees is a record for the warmest it's been when there's been
That's
snow. Obviously, it was dry.
unreal.
I could be
Unreal.
wrong. It's been 20 years since I've been in college, but I remember the page. There's a guy with jean shorts. He's like standing on. It's funny the things you remember.
Jean shorts.
Yeah, and he was
you
like
remember all
in
the
this.
songs?
I remember
and all
songs.
the words.
He was in this little square box. You know how these little little insert thing. Anyway. Let's talk about the cold air. That's what you want to know about, not my memories of one of my meteorology books. Cold air dipping south with our jet stream. That is going to bring us temperatures that are below average, some of us 15 degrees below average, and you can see the front where it's located right now. Can you find it just looking at the temperatures? Chicago, St. Louis in the 70s and 80s, there's our front right in between the two. So watch what's going to happen as that cold air goes south. It's going to take us down, significantly. You can see it tonight, 40s and 50s. This is our first front that's going to come through. Then we get reinforcements. So if you look at the long-range models, that northern tier is going to continue to stay on the cool side. Look at it all the way down to Dallas at 71. You see the front does not sweep through all of Texas. That's what happens in the south. They kind of wash out, and we don't get that cool air. But Oklahoma City, 81's our average high. We're going to be 61 on Wednesday. Then we stay into the 70s. And again, there's our second cold front coming through. They're not, colder than the next. They're just reinforcing the below average temperatures. Jim.
We'll take it. All right, it's that time of the year. All right, let's talk about what we got today. We'll watch for some severe storms across the Midwest. Some of these, again, if they go severe, will be damaging wind producers, maybe a small tornado as well. Tropical downpours across the Northeast today, an absolute soaker in much of New England, 1 to 3 inches of rain all the way down through Philly. And there's the old blue norther rolling on through Texas. Look at that, 50s and 10s.
It's unreal. Who would have thought Lubbock would be colder than Twin Cities? Tomorrow in September, they should be in the 80s. That's
it's not fair, Abrams. It's not fair.
This program brought to you by SeekingRelief.com. Learn about ways to help recurring constipation and belly pain.
Ahead on Weather Center Live, soaking storms move into the Northeast where the heaviest rain will fall, and who's at risk for flash flooding.
More than 100 million people are at risk of severe storms this week. We're timing out the rounds of storms that could produce damaging winds and tornadoes.
And a fall front will sweep across the country this week, bringing a blast of cool air to millions who will have to wait a little bit longer for it to finally feel like autumn. Weather Center Live starts right now. Well, thanks for joining us here on Weather Center Live. I'm meteorologist Alex Wallace.
And I'm meteorologist Tevin Wooten. Dr. Erica Navarro will join us in a moment with the latest on today's threat of severe storms.
First, though, we begin with some wild video. You got to see this here. Heavy rain really pounding Tunisia, causing chaos as raging waters sweep away cars. Now, the flash flooding left at least 4 people dead. Parts of the North African country here got 8 inches of rain on Saturday. Now, to put that into perspective, that's about half its yearly rainfall they picked up there in just one day. Amazing. And speaking of raging water, check out the scene that was unfolding here at this creek in Alexandria, Tennessee. The water here actually was flowing pretty quickly here, gushing along the Walter Creek. Now, the person who captured the video here, unfortunately, is still right now, but that video shows the water that was moving very fast. It was basically ankle deep, and then 3 minutes later, it was a raging river. That area was under a flash flood warning after some heavy rainfall. There were also reports of several road closures. We got more rain, though, expected throughout the rest of the week in that general zone. Tevin?
Yeah, today tropical downpours will douse the Northeast. Pittsburgh and New York are just a couple of places seeing that threat as we take a live look at you both on a Tuesday. Heavy rain and thunderstorms will dominate these areas today, and we'll call it Transition Tuesday because we're on this wet pattern right now. We'll stay on that wet pattern for the better part of today and tomorrow, but there is some drier air and cooler air on the way too. I'll talk about that in just a second, but first we want to talk about this wet stuff because it is a soggy commute right now anywhere in the Northeast and the New England states. Burlington back to Buffalo, looking at that rainfall and cloudy conditions right now. As we zoom in, you can see that activity starting to work towards the north, just north of 790 there. That's where some of the heavier activity is, and also along I-88 there in that yellow color showing you those heavier downpours. As we work our way towards the south and west, Hagerstown back towards Philadelphia or up towards Philadelphia, getting in on some of that soggy activity this morning. And take a look at this too, because this may cause some delays in the air. DC, you're seeing mostly to partly cloudy skies today, but it's LaGuardia that's going to have some issues right now with 36-minute delays due to the rain and due to some of the wind too. And so here's what's happening. This tropical moisture is starting to pull in from the Gulf of Mexico towards the north, and this front out here, it's going to be stalled out, and that's going to be a lifting mechanism to lift that surface moisture into the atmosphere, condense it out, and cause some rain and thunderstorms. So we'll time this out for you today on Tuesday as we go throughout the morning hours. Some spots near Pittsburgh and western PA seeing some drier skies, but as we go throughout the afternoon, that activity starts to pick up as it works towards the east a little bit. And then look at this heavier stuff here too, all the way down from Burlington to Binghamton, Boston, back towards New York, and maybe even some spots of Long Island too. By tonight, we clear out in early parts of tomorrow morning, but we do it all again tomorrow. And because we're seeing a lot of this rain and flash flooding, we do have that chance of flash flooding through tomorrow morning. So Scranton back towards Boston and down towards New York and Providence too, all in line for that potential for flash flooding. So here's a look at what New York can expect today. Yep, thunderstorms today. We dry out tonight, but it is back on like Donkey Kong again tomorrow, Alex, with thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon.
All right, well, here's a look at some severe storms in action. This is some time-lapse video there of a wall cloud yesterday in northern Alabama. With the chance for some thunderstorms lingering there for the rest of the week. But that is not the only place at risk for that severe weather. Chicago, watch out there. South Bend there in Indiana, also in the danger zone as storms move their way on into the Midwest as we head through the next couple of days. Dr. Navarro is taking a look at that severe threat.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. We do have an isolated tornado risk across portions of Indiana and lower Michigan today. We will be watching as well for the threat for damaging winds from some of these strong storms that may develop as we head into this evening. Areas in play extend all the way from Missouri out towards Michigan, even to the western part of Pennsylvania. This is coming into play here with an upper level trough that's going to be pushing into the region and setting the stage here for severe weather. So in this region here across Illinois, Indiana, portions of Ohio and southern Michigan, we've got a 3 in our Torcon, which is a 30% chance of seeing a tornado within a 50-mile radius. And there's some uncertainty with just how this might set up and if these storms really do have that potential to produce a tornado. But it is in the cards, so just be aware that that is a risk embedded in some of these stronger storms today. Very high moisture is being being advected into the region here in front of this cold front. We also have very strong upper level winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which may get mixed down within some of those strong storms. So the threat for damaging wind also possible across those areas in Wisconsin, northern Illinois, and out into Indiana and Ohio. This morning, we do have some activity moving across the radar today. This is in the southern part of Illinois, moving into the southern part of Indiana. But as we head through the day, we're expecting to see a line of storms start developing off to the west as this upper level feature starts to push into the region. Notice as we head into the afternoon, we start to see some activity breaking out across central Iowa, maybe some strong storms pushing through the Des Moines area. But then by 5, 6 o'clock, that line moves through Madison and portions of southern Wisconsin, approaching the Chicago suburbs from the west here by about 6 o'clock Central Time. That line of storms may extend as far south as portions of central Missouri, maybe hitting St. Louis by the time we reach 8, 9 o'clock. And then notice if you look off to the east here, things start to get a little bit stormy next to Detroit, Indianapolis, and off towards Columbus. This will translate into the overnight hours. So the farther west you are from this area here, across Ohio, even Kentucky, portions of western Pennsylvania, this will translate into an overnight threat. Then everything will shift into the northeast and the mid-Atlantic into tomorrow. That threat for damaging winds likely very high, especially across portions of New England. We'll have that same moisture in place out ahead of that cold front here, very high dew points. And the instability, of course, will be the wild card with just how much destabilization we can get from the sunshine here during the day. But taking a look at the upper level winds, here's the forecast. Notice those purple colors. Those are showing you very strong winds at about 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere. If those get mixed down towards the surface and some of those strong thunderstorms, this could lead to very strong straight line damaging winds, which can be as dangerous as a tornado in some cases, strong enough to knock down trees, potentially cause issues with power lines, etc. So certainly something to look out for. Alex, we will have the shear support as well in the atmosphere for some potential supercells, so it could be a substantial threat tomorrow in the northeast.
Well, you know, as we keep seeing during a storm, full tree canopies can actually act as a sail in the wind. Storms can cause entire trees to uproot. Here's a look at why the saturated soil makes this danger even worse.
When storms blow through, downed trees littering the roadways and rooftops are a familiar sight, but there are many other contributing factors as well. First, most trees, about 90% of them, only have roots 18 to 24 inches deep, regardless of their height. And if you add rain, 3 to 4 inches at a time, the soil around the tree will weaken.
If you have any kind of drainage problem where you've had water running down or taking your topsoil or cutting a kind of a groove into the soil, or just change in general, that's going to cause the trees to probably have a higher potential to fail.
Trees in developed areas are even more susceptible.
When people build driveways right up next to them or build a house right up next to them, you basically got into that root plate and you've damaged the balance of the tree.
Then there's the weight of the tree itself.
There's a period there right late summer, about 3 weeks, say August, September, where everything is very heavy and you're going to see a lot of limbs breaking live and dead.
And that can happen with wind gusts as low as 30 miles per hour. So here are some things you can do to reduce your risk. Use mulch 2 to 4 inches deep as far out from the tree as you can. Have your trees inspected each year. And have your trees thinned each year, not only to reduce the weight, but to allow the wind to pass through and reduce your chances of the tree being uprooted.
We'll check out some of these clouds, storm clouds that were moving through Leflore County, Mississippi last night. That's about 2 hours north of Jackson there. Pretty dark, ominous skies. Now we've got more storms on tap for this area today and other parts of the southeast as well. And along with the storm threats, going to come some downpours with some of the storms that we have to contend with. Here's what's going on. We've got some moisture streaming on in to parts of the south, even getting up into the northern tier as well here for this early part of the week. There's coming in out of the tropics, in fact, from the Gulf of Mexico. You got sources of moisture also from the Atlantic as well. So that moisture is not lacking out there for us, and that's going to certainly aid in the shower and thunderstorm development that we see for today. Heads up in places like New Orleans, back up towards Jackson. You got Nashville as well. ATL, you've seen some showers in the early part of the day. Can't rule out a few more as we head through the day. Otherwise, mainly cloudy skies. Same around the Raleigh area, and then some storms this afternoon around Tampa with temperatures topping out in the lower 90s. Here's what it looks like right now on the radar. You can see the concentrations of some rain here right along the Gulf Coast, especially southwestern parts of Alabama, the panhandle of Florida, seeing some rain, some showers a bit farther north into northern parts of Mississippi, Tennessee, some spotty showers there as well. But as we head through the day, we get a little heating going, and we'll start to see more showers and storms
becoming a bit more numerous here across the deep south. So 3, 4, 5 o'clock, things becoming a bit more unsettled with the downpours out there, and then continuing this evening before things start to settle down as we lose some of that heating of the day. Tomorrow we'll essentially do it all over again with more rain showers and storms, maybe a better shot for the ATL. Storms will be around Nashville early in the day. It looks like temperatures there are only going to top out in the low 70s. The same around Little Rock, early morning showers. And then by the time we get in towards the latter part of our day, we'll be looking for dry skies and cooler numbers. Watch out, though, from tomorrow through Thursday. There's going to be this zone from eastern Mississippi up into western sections of North Carolina, Tevin, where we could at least see the possibility of some flash flooding.
All right, Alex, well, the three rivers that converge in Georgetown, South Carolina will start delivering dangerous flooding today. The floodwaters could lay siege to a good part of the coastal community for days. And as meteorologist Chris Bruin shows us, officials haven't issued a mandatory evacuation order, but they are urging 8,000 people to leave their homes.
Temporary berms line highways in Georgetown. Stores are barricaded behind sandbags. The South Carolina National Guard is ready for the rush of water. If floods cut off the bridges that span the rivers, a floating ribbon bridge will serve as a backup.
Volume of water coming from the north area along the Waccamaw River and the Great Petey River going to converge in the Winyah Bay as they try to go out to sea.
Next door, traffic is flowing again on I-95 in North Carolina.
Today is squeegee day. Get the water out of the store.
Businesses are ripping up soggy carpet and cutting out wet drywall. The owner of the Noose Sports Shop is adding up his losses.
The numbers are climbing. It'll be somewhere north of $1 million, we're pretty sure.
Water still surrounds entire neighborhoods in Lumberton. Homes in Kinston are isolated islands. The Lumber River is falling, but remains.
Of course, all that flooding from Florence and its residual effects. We are a week and a half removed from that storm, but we are still seeing some of the lasting impacts it's bringing onto parts of the Carolinas. And we can see that, too, by a lot of our river gauges in between North and South Carolina. That purple to pink color, those are going to be gauges that are in major flood stage and are still staying that way for quite some time. We'll zoom into some of those in South Carolina. For Anor and Conway, seeing two of those gauges in major flood stage right now. As we work our way to the Waccamaw River in Conway, South Carolina, this is one that is still not crested just yet. The record was 17.9 feet. The latest observation is at about 21 feet. We're going to see a crest tomorrow around 22 feet. And so what is that going to do for some of the homes and businesses in that area? Well, Hurricane Matthew in 2016 crested 2 feet higher than where this will crest. It's 15 feet level, so even when it does go down, we're still seeing some residential flooding that's worsening in Conway and Marina and some of the railroads there, too, with trestle flooding. Alex?
Well, we want to turn now to the tropics, and right now the map lit up out there from the Pacific into the Atlantic. A lot of circles showing up out there. You can see the percentages of some of those invest areas trying to develop here for us. But again, a little closer to home, that's that area Invest 98L. We'll see what it has to do, what it may be doing to us here in the coming days. Let's bring in Dr. Navarro. She's got to check on that Invest.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. We've been keeping a close eye on this system here because of its potential to bring some rainfall back towards the Carolinas. This storm still does have some opportunity to develop today as the upper level winds are allowing it the opportunity here for some intensification. Right now it has a 50% chance, a 1 in 2 of developing likely towards a tropical depression. That's what we're looking at this point. We do see some thunderstorm activity, and if it does develop, you can see it's just about 200 miles off the coast. So it would be in this general vicinity if we do see that type of organization. But regardless of the organization, the impacts are going to be the same. We're not expecting to see a strong tropical system at this point. If you look at the water vapor imagery, those bright green colors are showing you where all the moisture is located. And once again, it's just off our coastline. Even on the radar, we can see what the radar is doing. Strong showers and thunderstorms here just off the coast of eastern North Carolina. If we go ahead and play this forward, we'll show you the future radar to see what we're expecting later on today. That moisture will begin to pick up on the outer fringes of that system, likely likely around the Greenville area and places to the south, maybe down towards west of Morehead City, off towards Wilmington. It looks like there might be a band of showers that sets up at this point sometime this afternoon. As that system starts to skirt to the north, it may clip the Outer Banks here with some heavy rainfall. But for the most part, if that is a depression or if it does develop, most of it is likely to stay offshore. Maybe we get some stray showers, maybe accumulating about up to an inch of precipitation. So thankfully, we're not expecting it to be high if we do see those totals. We will, however, have a high rip current risk along the beaches today with that system just offshore. The highest risk into the northern and eastern parts of North Carolina, moderate risk as we get down to the southeastern portion of North Carolina, like Wilmington and areas to the east, and then down to Myrtle Beach. So Alex and Tevin, thankfully, not a lot of rainfall from this one.
Yeah, thankfully, that's for sure. Well, Dr. Varro is going to join us again later this hour as we track several of those other areas to watch in the Atlantic.
But first, it's sweater weather season. A cold front is set to bring in a blast of cooler air. After the break, how long do those below average temperatures last? We'll answer that question coming up. All right, well, talk about feeling the love of light snow. We're barely into the fall season and already one of the big ski resorts in Colorado getting a dusting of snow. Loveland saw a few flakes flying yesterday. The city of Loveland, they averaged, get this, about 41 inches of snow during the year. That just lets you know that we're into fall. And winter is not that far away either. And to get some of that snow, of course, you've got to have cooler air. So what's bringing in all that cooler air? Well, our jet stream right here. This is in the upper level of the atmosphere, diving down towards the south, bringing in some of those cooler winds and cooler temperatures, and that's mixing down towards the surface, bringing some below average temperatures to the Dakotas, to some spots of, yes, even Oklahoma and Texas too. That's with one cold front. We have a second cold front behind that's going to bring in another shot of cooler air, but we'll get through the first one first. No cool air today in Texas, 94 degrees in Midland, 91 for San Antonio, and 89 degrees in Dallas, 86 for Oklahoma City. But by tomorrow, that's when we start to feel some of the effects of this cold front. Look at this, Lubbock at 56 degrees, down towards Midland there at 62, and OKC at a nice cool 61 degrees tomorrow. Some of these temperatures, we don't see this in the Kansas City, for example, 68 degrees until October the 13th. Oklahoma City, this is something indicative of mid-November. And then Lubbock, Texas, you don't see this until December. But guess what? There is another shot of cold air that's going to come in midweek this week. That's going to bring a reinforcing shot of some nice, decent or perfect temperatures to some extent. I don't like to say perfect weather, but we will have those nice conditions, especially to wake up in the morning. Some of these temperatures, though, running about 20 to 25 degrees below average in Billings, Montana. Rapid City, South Dakota, that is 25 to 30 degrees below average. We're talking about your highs on Friday around 46 degrees. So let's take a look at Saturday morning because it's going to get even cooler than that. Pierre, South Dakota, looking at temperatures around 35 degrees. Bismarck at a nice 31 degrees. In some spots in Minnesota could see temperatures in the 20s. These are temperatures, the first freeze on average in Bismarck is around September 15th and into some spots of early October. But look at this, even some spots of Iowa, you don't see that first freeze, though, until mid-October. But, Alex, one place that's not cold, Florida.
Yeah, you said it. The fall season, though, can bring some pretty cool sunsets. This is a spectacular sight in Sanford, Florida. That's a pretty view there, right? Now, as for the cool down we're seeing in the other parts of the country, yeah, we're saying not so fast for other places like in the south. So Tevin got a chance to talk about the weather that I love. I get to talk about the weather I despise, and that is the heat and humidity, which is going to hang around. Unfortunately, for those who want the cool down, it's not happening in the deep south here as we head on through the coming days, at least the southeast. Here's what today looks like. Houston, upper 80s expected. New Orleans will be in the mid-80s. How about 90s across Florida from Jacksonville, Tampa down towards Miami? Warm times are anticipated there. So there's that front for the mid part of the week. There it is. Behind it, there comes that nice, refreshing air mass. Out ahead of it, though, it's just not happening. The front essentially puts the foot on the brakes, and it hangs around, and out ahead of it, we're going to keep things pretty warm and also on the muggy side. So here's what it looks like in terms of the dew point readings. That's that measure of the moisture in the atmosphere. You see the lower numbers back towards the north and the west here. That's that refreshing air mass where all the green is showing up. That's where we've got things staying on the humid side. So this is according to the European model, and you'll notice how all the green starts to get eaten away across the Central Plains, the Heartland, Midwest, Tennessee Valley as well, and then Parks. And look at these numbers, 70s, ATL is going to stay muggy. Richmond, not too terrible at 60 degrees, but again, the nice cool stuff is hanging out here with the 40-degree dew points by the time we get into Thursday. That's going to feel just fantastic. So looking at tomorrow, your high temperatures, Nashville to Little Rock, those areas actually cool down a bit, but we're still remaining pretty warm here for you from Jacksonville down towards Miami. You know, Florida, you just don't get much help and reprieve from the humidity at this time of the year. It's just not going to happen. Well, with the start of the new season, there is already some controversy, but we're here to set the record straight about why this season has two names. Here's Alex Wilson with some answers.
'Tis the season, time for the great debate. No, not that one.
I say fall. I was just brought up to say fall. That's the way I say it, but autumn is an elegant word, and I wish that I said autumn.
I usually just say fall, but I refer to the autumn leaves.
Well, which is it? Why does the season, starting during the third week of September, have two names? The terms winter and summer have been around about 1,000 years, distinguishing between the coldest and warmest parts of the year. But it took time to recognize other seasons. Autumn, a Latin word used in the 14th century, loosely means end of harvest or season. In the 16th century, fall of the leaf referred to the season following summer. This was shortened to fall. Both words, fall and autumn, were transferred to North America a few centuries ago.
Fall. Yeah, we're in the South, so it's fall. I feel like autumn is like a northern word. Like fall is just like Halloween and corn mazes and, apple cider. So I always say fall.
Autumn is still used in the UK, but there's a third option. In the 1300s, it was called harvest. But it doesn't matter what you call it. Get out and enjoy what most people consider to be the best of all seasons. I'm Alex Wilson, the Weather Channel.
It's fall, right?
Yeah, fall.
Fall, come on.
Fall, y'all.
All right, well, over the next 2 days, nearly 100 million of you will be in danger for dealing with severe storms.
Those threats include possible tornadoes and thunderstorms starting today. We'll time it out and pinpoint the areas at greatest risk in just moments. Destruction in the capital region of Canada. Take a look at the damage left behind from 3 tornadoes that struck there on Friday. The strongest, an EF3 with winds as high as 165 miles an hour.
Now, 4 people remain hospitalized, 1 in critical condition. Meanwhile, utility crews work to restore power to the Ottawa suburbs. This after more than 200,000 customers lost power. Well, thanks so much for joining us here on Weather Center Live. I'm meteorologist Alex Wallace.
And I am meteorologist Tevin Wooten. More than 100 million people are at risk for severe storms this week. Dr. Erica Navarro joining us in just a moment to time out those storms. And we have a new picture to share just into the Weather Channel with storms moving into the northeast. This is not a welcome sight. You can see crumbling road with the threat of a landslide. This is in Pennsylvania, just about 15 miles outside of Pittsburgh. Right now, road workers are putting up a larger barrier along Hillside Avenue. And let's begin in the northeast, where tropical downpours will target millions of you. Boston and Philadelphia are in line for that heavy rain threat and thunderstorms. Philly, you are under a coastal flood advisory through this evening. And Alex, there's a lot of moisture coming into the northeast and New England states to bring in those tropical downpours.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be one of those days, just really soggy times out there for a number of us here across the north and the east. So lunchtime, I'd probably say you're keeping it inside because it's going to be so wet. Here's what it looks like right now, and you can see the showers continue from the mid-Atlantic, sliding up into southern New England, and eventually it'll take over northern New England as well. Right now, cloudy skies on places like Portland, Maine, up towards places like Caribou as well. But eventually you'll see the rain start to take over in those locations. Boston, you're getting ready to get on it as well. Right now, cloudy skies being reported, but you can see the rain showers are really starting to get into the picture there for you. There's more rain continuing back towards the west. Albany, Stockton, pretty good. Becomes a bit more sporadic in nature here for us as you get back over towards Syracuse, but still some showers continue to rotate on in there. And then off towards the south here across eastern parts of Pennsylvania. Wet weather there for us. Down on into Maryland. We'll see right now north and west of Baltimore some steady rains and some sprinkles and showers right now right in our nation's capital. So here's what's going on here for this early part of the week. Bit of a dip of the jet stream here back on off towards the west, and out ahead of that the moisture just continues to stream in from the Gulf of Mexico, as well as moisture streaming in from the Atlantic. So you got 2 moisture sources and the risk for rain continuing out there for this early part of the week. This boundary hanging around, that's also going to help to focus some rain showers, maybe even some storms as well. So here's how it plays out for the rest of the day. We'll take you through it, put the radar into future mode. You see how that rain continues to surge on off towards the north and the east by about 2, 3 o'clock. Bangor, you're dealing with the rain. Caribou as well. Still in that rain around Boston this evening. Drying out, though, as you head a bit farther to the south and the west. So Baltimore looks a bit quieter, Philly as well. But there's more rain and some potential storms coming in from the west. That's starting to move in late tonight into the early part of our Wednesday. Tevin?
Alex, well, we've got that severe threat out towards the west a little bit. Here's a look at some of the areas in the red zone today for severe weather across the Midwest. Among the targeted spots are Chicago and St. Louis, as we take a live look at both of you with your temperatures right now in the upper 60s and lower 70s. But with some daytime heating, we can increase those temperatures. And Dr. Navarro, of course, we can increase that chance of thunderstorms, too, today.
Absolutely, Tevin. We could see some strong storms today push through the Midwest. Just how many we get may be dependent on how much sunshine we get breaking through the clouds today. But we do have a tornado risk across portions of the Midwest today. It's a 3 on our Torcon. That's a 30% chance. But this is a non-zero chance. Some of these storms do have that potential to produce some strong winds, in particular across portions of Indiana, southern Michigan, and portions of Ohio. That's the region we're keying on for that enhanced risk, but there is a risk throughout the Midwest today. Very high dew points advecting into the region are what is setting the stage here for this severe threat. It's all going to be linked to that cold front that's pushing across the country. Some activity on the radar this morning, but really it's going to be what comes later on this afternoon that's likely going to be creating our potential for severe weather. If we look at the future radar, this is looking ahead towards 2 o'clock this afternoon. We start to see some storms breaking out across central Iowa, maybe the most southeastern portion of Minnesota. Then they push through Madison, portions of southern Wisconsin, and approach Chicago by about 7 o'clock tonight. Again, damaging winds as well could be a big big threat with these storms, with those strong winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere potentially getting mixed into some of those thunderstorms. By this evening, we see activity pretty widespread here across portions of the Midwest, including Ohio, places like Indianapolis, Columbus, even Detroit, seeing some strong storms this evening. And this threat does continue into the overnight hours. We see here across northern and northeastern Ohio, activity still ongoing into the early hours of the morning. So damaging winds likely also a big threat for the Midwest today. This will be from the eastern portion of Iowa all the way to the eastern part, the eastern border here of Michigan, as well as Ohio. But then this threat will translate into the Northeast tomorrow, and we will have the threat for damaging winds across New England and the Mid-Atlantic as well. Very high dew points here out ahead of this cold front, and enough instability to create that potential for severe weather. Of course, it may be limited here as we're heading into the month of October, but it still will be enough in combination with these strong winds to create some strong severe weather. Alex and Tevin?
All right. Well, you know, it's a mandate not easy to accept, but necessary.
Right now, dozens of families are being forced out of their homes. More on their fight to recover after a deadly hurricane.
Florence long gone, but the hurricane's impact remains a big issue across the Carolinas. Emergency officials took a look at how high the rivers already are in Conway, South Carolina. Now, much of the damage is near Crabtree Swamp. not too far from downtown. Now, the Waccamaw River could crest around 22 feet tomorrow. That water level would surpass what Hurricanes Matthew and Floyd did. So we're still, unfortunately, feeling the impacts of Florence here across parts of the Carolinas. Just amazing to think. And it's because of just the tremendous amounts of rain that we had to deal with there. In fact, if we look back, the highest rains from a tropical system, you can see both North and South Carolina coming because of Florence. 35.93 in North Carolina. That eclipsed what happened with Floyd in 1999. And here's South Carolina, nearly 24 inches here with Florence again, just an amazing amount of rain. So all that rain still has not gotten to some of these rivers, which continue in some cases to climb. So here's what's going on with some of these river gauges right now. You see a number of gauges that are in either minor, moderate, or major flood stage. The major is the purple ones. The red is in moderate flood stage, getting down on into parts of South Carolina. Got a couple of zones where we got major flood stage action ongoing. And again, we still have not gotten to that crest. They're in Conway there. The Waccamaw River expected to crest tomorrow at 22 feet. Tomorrow afternoon at 22 feet. We've already at this point at 21 feet. We're already above the record stage, and we've got another foot to go and hanging on to major flood stage for quite some time. So it's going to be a while before that river finally comes down. Now, when you get to 22 feet there in Conway, look where we get over 21 feet. Water levels are now 2 feet higher than what they were in Matthew as well as Floyd. So, yeah, this is going to be something to watch here as we head on through the next couple of days. Tevin?
And another tough blow for families reeling from Florence. About 60 families in Wilmington, North Carolina were told they had to leave right away because their homes are so damaged by the storm. Chelsea Donovan from our affiliate WECT shows us why there is hope for a silver lining under gray skies.
He got greater for us and better. Yes. We're going to get over this storm.
Shedding tears and embracing, residents pray together before being forced to part ways.
I mean, who walked away from 14 years worth of stuff?
O.C. Hollingsworth has to. She's one of 64 families being told to vacate ASAP from the Glen apartment community.
There's this gaping hole. This whole bed is soaked.
80% of the 491 residents had damage from wind, rain, and falling trees courtesy of Florence.
It just poured out and everything. You see the mold on the wall.
Monday was spent feverishly and frantically salvaging their life's work.
It's like you're losing stuff, your personal stuff that you have a routine for. You're losing because you're trying to gather everything and keep everything together. I mean, it's hard. You know, who can just move in a day?
The Glen sent out these notices on Saturday, terminating leases due to unrepairable damage. Mold, water, and asbestos have now made its way into many homes.
It's like was very devastating, you know, because you looking like, okay, where do I go? How do I begin from this? You know, it's like it was very emotional.
It's perfectly legal to terminate the leases, according to a North Carolina general statute. In terms of relief, though, FEMA has now stepped in to help those who are left with no place to go.
If their homes or their rental apartments or homes become unlivable, they may be eligible for some type of transitional sheltering allowance.
For now, many are trying to stay positive after a second blow by a storm that's already taken so much.
We're going to make it. Yes, we are. We're going to make it. And we're going to come out better. Yes, we are.
And Florence making landfall about a week and a half ago, but we're still dealing with some of the remnants. Hard to believe, the remnants of Florence coming back around again, Dr. Erica Navarro. But the good news is, though, this will not be anywhere near what we saw the first time around, but still a nuisance.
Yeah, absolutely, Tevin. This system is in some way linked to the system that once was Florence. There is some energy that could be attributed to that, but nonetheless, here we do have a system right off the coast of the Carolinas, which could be bringing some rainfall here and potentially may develop in the next 24 hours. There's a 50% chance on it right now. Yes, we could see some organization, but I don't want you to focus too much on that. Regardless of what it is or it isn't at this point, it will be bringing those impacts just the same. And that's the important part here in terms of what's to come for the Carolinas. So here's a look at the water vapor. There's the moisture associated with that system. It's about 200 miles off the Carolina coast. We're starting to see the outer fringes of that precipitation come towards portions of eastern North Carolina, and it's here that we could expect to see some enhanced precipitation today as this system continues continues to move west and then eventually north of the area. If we look at our future radar, some of the outer bands of that system, maybe if it becomes a depression or not, that's what we're talking about here. That looks like it could come into play across portions of southern Virginia, maybe around the Greenville area, North Carolina, east of Fayetteville, maybe down towards Wilmington. Some spotty showers and thunderstorms likely with that system as it skirts to the north. Then we'll see that area basically come close to the Outer Banks. Right now it looks to stay off to the east. We could see some deviation from that, but when you put it all together, it's not going to be a tremendous amount of precipitation. Maybe up to an inch in some areas, maybe locally higher depending on how strong maybe those thunderstorms are when they form. But Alex and Tevin, luckily we're not talking about big totals here.
Absolutely. Well, you know, there's a lot more action happening in the tropics. Dr. Eric Navarro has another look at the other areas that we're watching.
Plus, that sniffle you could be dealing with could be a cold or just allergies. We've got tips on telling the difference coming up.
Well, take a look at this. This is Super Typhoon Trami there in the Pacific. The strongest typhoon on the planet right now with winds about 155 miles an hour. That would be the equivalent of a Category 4 hurricane in the Atlantic. Look at where it's headed, moving its way on off towards the north-northeast at this point, I should say, curving towards the north-northeast eventually. Could have an impact on Japan. We'll have to keep a track on that here in the coming days. But right now, a lot of activity that is going on in the Atlantic Basin as well as the Pacific. Let's bring in our hurricane specialist, Dr. Eric Navarro. Look at all this activity hanging around out there. And it's not, crazy to think that we'd be seeing active conditions out there even at this time of the year.
Right, this is the time,
yeah.
Right? I mean, even into late September, you look at our climatology, our history here, there's a lot of areas that light up in terms of activity. So this is fairly typical for the month of September. But if you look at the map of what's going on right now, we've got 4 different areas that we're keeping an eye on in the Atlantic, 2 off in the Eastern Pacific. So things are certainly lighting up in the tropics, so to speak. Now, this first area here, this is the remnants of what was Kirk, that tropical wave that came off of Africa. It lost its center of circulation as it encountered some unfavorable conditions here, but these remnants are hanging on. They still do have that chance to redevelop into a tropical system, which would bring impacts towards the Caribbean and maybe places like the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico in the coming days. So don't be surprised if you see this come back to life here. 60% chance on that development. It's still taking that westward track, so we could be looking at some gusty winds and precipitation, enhanced precipitation coming in with the system here.
Kirk wanted to certainly follow, that's for sure.
Yeah, but we do have some other areas here out in the Atlantic, Leslie, which may hang around in this area for quite some time, and of course the Invest off the Carolinas. But watch what happens as we head through time. There goes the Invest area out to sea, likely getting absorbed somehow into the circulation that is Leslie. You don't see Kirk at this point. That system maybe crosses into the Caribbean and then gets sheared apart as it heads towards the western part. Then things after that look fairly quiet. Maybe some waves looking off of Africa. There's Leslie making a run here for the Azores Islands, so we have to watch that very carefully. But into the month of October, things look pretty okay, so to speak, at this point in time.
We'll take that. A lot out there, but in terms of the impacts to us,
yes,
seem to be pretty minimal.
That's right, and that's what we're always focused on, right? There might be stuff out to sea, of course, that has waves and stuff that we watch, but right now, no impacts to land. And here's Leslie, a subtropical depression, but if you watch the track of the cone here, notice it goes to the east, goes back to the north, wait a second, comes back around. Going to make a pretty strange transition here over the next couple of days.
A little loop-de-loop there. Yeah. All right, Tevin, we'll send it over to you.
All right, guys. Well, this is something to get you in the fall spirit or the fall mood. The foliage in downtown Milford, New Hampshire. Take a look at the tree line in the back. We have some oranges starting to show up on the trees, and that just lets you know fall has arrived, and we're going to start to see some of those colors change on the trees. When can you expect that out towards the front range of the Colorado Rockies? Well, anywhere from late September to early October is typically when we see those leaves start to peak and turn to their nice shades of oranges and greens and eventually browns when they fall off. And then up towards Yellowstone, you can see that early October to mid-October. And for the Rockies right now, most of this is patchy activity, but near some spots of Utah, you are near your peak, and also northern Colorado too. And as we get towards the Midwest, well, right now, most of your activity too is patchy, but right in some spots of International Falls over towards the east and northern Minnesota, you are reaching your near peak activity. Of course, Alex, all of this activity is driven by some of the colder air that seeps in, and those leaves start to die out, and then eventually they fall off the tree, and then those trees become bare.
Oh, your sneeze and cough may be symptoms of a cold, or it could be your fall allergies kicking in. Meteorologist Chris Bruin spoke to doctors to find out how to tell the difference.
According to some estimates, there are 1 million colds in the U.S. every year. But with coughing, sneezing, runny nose, it's hard to tell whether your stuffy nose and watery eyes are a cold or allergies.
A cold will cause some of the same symptoms that allergy sufferers experience, including congestion and drainage and sneezing. But if you feel like you have a cold, but it has more itching of your nose and eyes, and you have symptoms persist for longer than a week, you probably have allergy.
There are other ways to tell. With winter allergies, nasal secretions are watery and clear, but with colds, they're discolored. Itchy eyes and throat are common with allergies, while colds give you chills and body aches. And if you get summer allergies, the chances are you're a good bet for winter allergies.
Indoor allergens that are of greatest relevance would include dust mites, microscopic creatures that live in dust, mold spores and mildew, cat and dog danders.
If symptoms persist for more than a week, see your doctor.
And a lot of people are also allergic to this. Pollen, yes, hard to believe that is still around, Alex, and very high in some spots of Oklahoma and Kansas.
Yeah, weed pollen really taking over in those locations. Parts of the Mid-Atlantic as well feeling it. But Gulf Coast, Great Lakes, New England, Northern Plains, Northwest seems to be pretty clear in terms of the weed pollen.
Well, allergies strike in the fall and spring, and so do severe storms. We're tracking the dangerous storm threat today, including the possibility of tornadoes.
Yeah, we're going to time out the storms that could threaten nearly 100 million people, and we're going to show you why all that rain before the storms could make things even worse. Ahead on Weather Center Live, soaking storms move into the Northeast, where the heaviest rain will fall and who's at risk for flash flooding.
More than 100 million people are at risk of severe storms this week. We're timing out the rounds of storms that could produce damaging winds and tornadoes.
And a fall front will sweep across the country this week, bringing a blast of cool air to millions who will have to wait, though, a little bit longer for it to finally feel like autumn. Weather Center Live starts right now. Well, thanks for joining us here on Weather Center Live. I'm meteorologist Alex Wallace.
And I'm meteorologist Tevin Wooten. Dr. Erica Navarro will join us in just a moment with the latest on today's threat of severe storms.
First, though, we begin with some pretty wild video. You have to see some heavy rain pounding Tunisia, causing chaos as raging waters sweep away cars. Now, the flash flooding left at least 4 people dead. Parts of the North African country got 8 inches of rain on Saturday, and that's essentially half of its yearly rainfall. that they picked up there in just one day. Amazing. Well, speaking of raging water, we have this scene unfolding here at this creek in Alexandria, Tennessee. You see that water just gushing. This was yesterday along the Walter Creek. Now, the person who captured the video says the water went from about ankle deep to this in just a matter of 3 minutes. That's the exact definition of flash flooding there. They were under a flash flood warning this after the heavy rain fell. There were also reports of several road closures, more rain as expected throughout the rest of this week. Tevin?
Yeah, today tropical downpours will douse the northeast. Pittsburgh and New York are just a couple of places seeing that threat as we take a live look at you both on a Tuesday. Heavy rain and thunderstorms will dominate these areas today. And if you don't see the rain, you'll still likely see a lot of cloud coverage. And take a look at the satellite and radar right now where there is not rain. There is some cloud cover, but most of the northeast right now dealing with rain from Burlington down towards Buffalo and down towards D.C. too. In fact, D.C. this month, September, has been the wettest September going back to 2013. In fact, since 2013, if you combine 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, you picked up more rain this month of September than you did of all those Septembers combined since 2017. As we move towards the north and east, a little bit more towards Burlington, down towards Albany, this is where you're seeing some of the heaviest rain, especially west right now, where some of those darker greens to yellow colors are starting to work their way towards the north and east. As we work our way towards the south and west, more heavy activity right here working its way towards Hagerstown and eventually towards the east as well. And so as we take a look at the delays in the sky right now, not a lot, but some places towards LaGuardia, that airport, seeing a 36-minute delay due to the rain and some of the wind impacts. So what's driving all these tropical downpours? Well, what we mean is we've got this tropical-like moisture. So Gulf of Mexico and Atlantic moisture streaming in towards the north and northeast, and it's working its way along this stalled out front. That's going to act as a lifting mechanism to lift all of that moisture into the atmosphere, condense it out, and fall as rain, and even form some thunderstorms too. So as we time this out for you, here's what we're expecting later on today. By 1:30 this afternoon, some spots do dry out, but there's some spots that also see some heavier storms, especially towards New York City as we go throughout the 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock hour today, and then it moves towards the north and east, and then we dry out. But we're going to do this all over again tomorrow too, and because some of these thunderstorms could come through, especially on the heavier side where we see high rainfall rates, that could prompt some localized flash flooding through tomorrow morning. So this is the area we're going to be watching for that possible activity. And New York, here's a look at your forecast today. Yep, you've got thunderstorms today. Temperatures, though, not that bad, in the upper 60s. Tonight you dry out, but we do reset the atmosphere and do it all again tomorrow, especially with more daytime heating. We can see the better chance of thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon. Alex?
Or here's a look at a few severe storms in action. This is actually some time-lapse video of a wall cloud that was showing up here in northern Alabama. Now, we do have the chance for some more thunderstorms. That's going to be lingering here for us for the rest of the week. But that's not the only place at risk for severe weather. Chicago, South Bend there in Indiana also in the danger zone as storms move into the Midwest. And into parts of the Northeast here, in fact, over the next couple of days. For the details on that, let's send it over to Dr. Navarro.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex. We could be seeing some severe weather across into the northern part of the country this week as we've got an upper level feature that will be pushing across the region. Today, we're focusing on the Midwest, maybe some areas down into the Mississippi Valley, including central Missouri, up into Iowa and as far east as Ohio, even Pennsylvania today for the chance for maybe some strong damaging winds, maybe even an isolated tornado. We've got a 3 in our Torcon here. That's a 30% chance of seeing a tornado within a 50-mile radius. And this shows you the conditions here could be favorable within some of these environments to create those spin-ups of some tornadoes. Very high moisture is being pushed into the region out ahead of this cold front. The dew points are rising into the upper 60s and 70s here, more than enough to support that activity. And of course, we've got the upper level wind support from the upper level trough that is going to be moving across the country. So this morning, we do have some activity on the radar, but it's really what's going to form later on today that we're concerned about in terms of that potential for severe weather. If we look ahead towards the afternoon, this is our future radar. That activity is likely going to be crossing portions of central Iowa into southern Wisconsin. Maybe some storms starting to light up across northern Missouri as well. By 6, 7 o'clock, that line of storms progresses into places like Chicago, maybe down towards St. Louis as well. We start to see that activity. Then things that also continue into the evening hours, maybe the overnight hours as well, across portions of Michigan, northern Indiana, and northern Ohio. This is a region we could be looking at some enhanced potential for tornado activity. So make sure you have a way to receive your warnings today. Be on alert. Just be aware that this is in the forecast today in case that does come up. We don't want you to be taken by surprise for that. The threat for damaging winds across this region also quite high. Places like Davenport, Chicago, Grand Rapids, as far east as Cleveland. That's the chance to see damaging winds. But then the threat will transition into the Northeast tomorrow as we see similar ingredients coming into play that could create the threat for strong damaging storms with strong winds associated with it. The moisture ahead of this front will be quite high, and we will have enough instability to support some strong, potentially organized severe storms. But it's really the upper level wind support here that's going to be creating the threat for damaging winds. As just 5,000 feet up the surface, we see here very strong winds across New England, which could get mixed down into some of those stronger storms. So potentially some spotty power outages, maybe some downed trees as well, all the potential with this line of storms as it progresses off to the east. If we look at the future radar here, you can see things really try to line up across portions of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, moving through Syracuse and central Pennsylvania early in the day, but then by 5 o'clock, you can see it advancing across southern New York, crossing into New Jersey, New York City as well, and then Boston. You may be in play tomorrow evening for those storms here. This is looking at 11 o'clock, so it could be a later threat for you before things finally move off the coast and dissipate at that point. So just putting it all together, we do have the tornado threat here as well. Alex, a 3-and-R Torcon for the Northeast on Wednesday.
Well, you know, as we keep seeing during a storm, full tree canopies can act as a sail in the wind. Storms can cause entire trees to uproot. Here's a look at why the saturated soils makes this danger even worse.
When storms blow through, downed trees littering the roadways and rooftops are a familiar sight, but there are many other contributing factors as well. First, most trees, about 90% of them, only have roots 18 to 24 inches deep, regardless of their height. And if you add rain 3 to 4 inches at a time, the soil around the tree will weaken.
If you have any kind of drainage problem where you've had water running down or taking your topsoil or cutting a kind of a groove into the soil, or just change in general, that's going to cause the trees to probably have a higher potential to fail.
Trees in developed areas are even more susceptible.
When people build driveways right up next to them or build a house right up next to them, you basically got into that root plate and you've damaged the balance of the tree.
Then there's the weight of the tree itself.
There's a period there, right, late summer, about 3 weeks, say August, September, where everything is very heavy and you're going to see a lot of limbs breaking live and dead.
And that can happen with wind gusts as low as 30 miles per hour. So here are some things you can do to reduce your risk. Use mulch 2 to 4 inches deep as far out from the tree as you can. Have your trees inspected each year. And have your trees thinned each year, not only to reduce the weight, but to allow the wind to pass through and reduce your chances of the tree being uprooted.
Check out these the clouds that were moving into LaFleur County. This is Mississippi last night. That's about 2 hours to the north of Jackson. Certainly dark, ominous skies there. Now, more storms are on tap for this area today, as well as other parts of the southeast. A rather unsettled next few is anticipated because we got more moisture that continues to stream on into the area. A bit of a front that's hanging around, not going to move a whole lot, helping to focus some of these showers and storms as well. So here's the setup for this early part of the week. Here comes that moisture coming in from the Gulf of Mexico. You also have a bit of moisture coming in from the Atlantic as well, all aiding in the development of this activity. Now, looks like today we'll see places like Houston, a chance for some storms over towards New Orleans, Jackson as well, up towards Tupelo. You got Birmingham in there as well, up towards Nashville later today, a storm potential there. And over on Tampa for your afternoon storms will fire up as highs reach up into the lower 90s. Right now, we do have a few showers here right along the immediate Gulf Coast here for you from Texas, Louisiana, all the way over towards the Florida Panhandle, and then some spotty showers across northern Mississippi in through Tennessee as well at this time. But we'll see a bit more getting going as we head on through the day. In fact, let's take you through it. Put the radar into future mode. There's your timestamp, and we'll move in towards our afternoon, and we'll start to notice a little bit more activity getting going with the heating of the day. So a few more showers and storms dotting the landscape here for us. You may be in and out of it around Jackson here as we head through our dinner time, the Atlanta area as well. And then by the time we get towards your midnight hour, still a few storms hanging out across northern Mississippi. Otherwise, things should start to quiet down just a bit. But then we'll do it all over again on our Wednesday. More showers and storms across the south and the east, Houston included. You'll be topping out right around 84 degrees. We'll also have to watch out because any of these storms that do fire up will be capable of producing some flash flooding, particularly in the zone from eastern Mississippi, Tevin, into the western portions of North Carolina.
All right, well, the three rivers that converge in Georgetown, South Carolina will start delivering dangerous flooding today. The floodwaters could lay siege to a good part of the coastal community for days. And as meteorologist Chris Bruin shows us, officials haven't issued a mandatory evacuation, but they are urging 8,000 people to leave their homes.
Temporary berms line highways in Georgetown. Stores are barricaded behind sandbags. The South Carolina National Guard is ready for the rush of water. If floods cut off the bridges that span the rivers, a floating ribbon bridge will serve as a backup.
Volume of water coming from the north area along the Waccamaw River and the Great Petey River going to converge in the Winyah Bay as they try to go out to sea.
Next door, traffic is flowing again on I-95 in North Carolina.
Today is squeegee day. Get the water out of the store.
Businesses are ripping up soggy carpet and cutting out wet drywall. The owner of the Noose Sports Shop is adding up his losses.
The numbers are climbing. It'll be somewhere north of $1 million, we're pretty sure.
Water still surrounds entire neighborhoods in Lumberton. Homes in Kinston are isolated islands. The Lumber River is falling, but remains in major flood stage. Several hundred people are waiting out the river at Red Cross shelters. The governor is pleading with people to sit tight.
Please, please stay away from flooded roads. We don't want to lose any more lives.
And it may be hard to believe, but we are still dealing with this flooding from Florence. In fact, some of these river gauges still have not crested, and they will crest as we go throughout the week. Of course, all this activity funneling into some of these rivers here, they are still at major flood stage from Myrtle Beach to Wilmington up towards the west of Morehead City. And major flood stage right now, two of those being Conway and Anor in South Carolina, major flood stage. And one of those in Conway actually expected to crest at 22 feet tomorrow. So right now we're at 21 feet. The record well above that. That record was 17.9 feet. And so we're still going to see some of the lasting impacts and the residual impacts in some of these creeks and streams here. The water levels are 2 feet higher than Matthew and Floyd. Matthew being back in 2016. And even when they do go down, Alex, at 15 feet, you still have threats to some homes and businesses in the area.
Well, turning now to the tropics, and the map, no doubt, it is lit up from the Pacific into the Atlantic as well. A lot of activity out there. The question is, will this activity have any impact on us? Well, let's bring in Dr. Eric Navarro. She's got the answer.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. We're keeping a close eye on a system here that could bring some impacts to the Carolinas. Of course, as Tevin just showed you, there are still impacts we're facing in the aftermath of Florence. Any more precipitation at this point could exacerbate those conditions. So this system here, this Invest area, does have the potential to bring some moisture. It also has the potential to continue developing in the next 24 hours. NHC giving this a 50% chance of development in that time frame. But likely, because this storm is about 200 miles off the coast now, if it does develop, it will likely be into a depression. We're not expecting to see any type of strong or rapid development of this system as it approaches our coastline. Taking a look at the water vapor imagery, there's that moisture associated with the system. You can see those deep thunderstorms forming up here just off the coast of the Carolinas. And taking a look at the radar, the heaviest precipitation is closer to that dense cloud cover that I just showed you, but we are seeing some of those outer bands, the outer periphery of that system starting to reach portions of eastern North Carolina. So this is the area we'll be watching for that precipitation today, as maybe some heavy outer bands start to set up on the eastern part of the state. There's that big area of moisture moving slowly off to the north and east, but notice you see that activity here start to pick up across portions of southern Virginia, down through the central and eastern part of North Carolina, maybe reaching as far south as Wilmington. Of course, these areas don't need any more precipitation, but there could be some spotty thunderstorms today that bring locally high rainfall rates as this system approaches from the east. Then leading on into the overnight hours, maybe some showers for the Outer Banks, but the majority of it does look to stay offshore at this point. So in terms of the totals, maybe about an inch to come in some of these areas. Certainly not a heavy amount. Again, maybe some locally higher values here, but notice those heavier bands of precipitation likely stay offshore with this system. We will have a rip current risk at the beaches, though, today as those winds approach from the east. High risk along the northern parts of the state and a moderate risk down towards Wilmington and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Alex and Tevin?
All right, well, Dr. Navarro is going to be joining us again later this hour as we track several other areas to watch in the Atlantic.
But first, it's sweater weather season. A cold front is set to bring a blast of cooler air. After the break, how long do the below average temperatures last?
And the changing weather can wreak havoc on your health. How to keep you and your family healthy this fall as Weather Center Live returns.
Talk about feeling the love of light snow. We're barely into the fall season, and already one of the big ski resorts in Colorado is getting a dusting of snow. Loveland saw a few flakes flying yesterday. The city averages, get this, about 41 inches of snow during the year, and this is just the beginning of what's to come, or what's typically to come for that part of the country. In fact, we've got to have this cooler air coming into that part of the country to get that snow, and we do certainly have that, especially in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So these jet stream winds are diving down towards the south, bringing in the cooler air behind it to the northern plains, and below average temperatures too once that gets mixed down towards the surface. So this is going to be front number one that we're watching, but believe it or not, there's going to be a second chance to get some cooler air into the southern plains. But for midweek, this is where we're looking at some of the cooler temperatures being. Yes, in Texas and in the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas, they're going to be seeing some cooler conditions. Not today, though. We've got plenty of warmth there. 91 for San Antonio, 94 for Midland and Odessa, 91 out towards El Paso. But it's tomorrow when this strong shot of cold air comes in. We see temperatures near 56 degrees for Lubbock and 63 for Midland and 61 even in Oklahoma City. These are highs tomorrow, and these are highs that we don't typically see this time of year, believe it or not, especially in Kansas City. The forecast high for tomorrow is at about 68 degrees. That's something you would typically see, say, in about 2 or 3 weeks in mid-October. And then Oklahoma City, your highs, right, what we're expecting tomorrow, that's typically something you don't see until November. And then, of course, Texas, you don't get drastically cold until December. So that's the first front. We clear that out. We have a second front coming through. So if you missed the first one, hopefully we can get you some of that cooler activity for the second front. But I think a lot of this activity sticks to the northern tier of the country and into the northern plains. So for Friday, here's where we're looking at that cold sector of air being. How cold is it? Well, it's about 20 to 25 degrees cooler in Billings, Montana for Friday. Rapid City, that high 46 degrees on Friday. That's about 25 to 30 degrees where you typically are this time of year. And Saturday gets even cooler than that. Look at this, 31 degrees for Bismarck, 35 for Pierre, and 30 for Casper, Wyoming. Yes, we are flirting with some freezing temperatures or below freezing temperatures. And in the northern plains in North Dakota, you don't typically see those freezing temperatures until early October. And then as we work our way towards the south, of course, like places like Iowa, they don't get that, Alex, until later on in October. But one place that's not so cold, it's Florida.
Yeah, you said it, but we do get a chance to enjoy some pretty nice sunsets here. Spectacular sight in Sanford, Florida here for us. Beautiful skies, got some clouds out there, the nice colors as well. Now, as for the cool down that we're seeing in other parts of the country, not so fast for other places like Florida and other sections of the deep south. Yeah, it's just not happening out there. So for those of us like myself who are waiting on it, yeah, we got to wait a little bit longer. What we've got for today, we've got plenty of 90s across Florida, at least near 90 around Miami, topping 90 in Tampa, 86 for your high around New Orleans, with Houston reaching the upper 80s. That's one of the warmer spots that we've got for the day. So there's the cold front. There is the cool air that will be coming in behind it. Tevin was talking about there to Texas, really getting the refreshing air mass. In some cases, maybe even a little too chilly. But out ahead of it, it's just stopping, putting the foot on the brakes. So we're going to stay hot, stay humid in these areas. And we can show you that here by looking at the European model and the dew point readings that we may be seeing over the coming days. Again, when we're talking about 70s, that's the juicy stuff where you step outside, immediately start sweating. That's what we've got here for a good portion of our Tuesday. But look what's back towards the west. Yeah, it's much, much drier air mass. Look at the numbers start to really fall off the cliff, dropping into the 40s, some cases down to the 30s at times. So that's that refreshing air mass that you get to enjoy, but we don't see that happening into parts of the deep south. The ATL holding on to the 70s. You can include Birmingham in there, the Carolinas as well. We continue to stay very, very warm and muggy. Tomorrow, 92 in Jacksonville, 86 in Atlanta. We got 70s out back from Little Rock over towards Nashville, so some of those areas actually get a chance to cool down just a bit. Charleston, for you, it is not happening. Near 90 essentially here through the rest of this week into the early part of the weekend, and those morning temperatures will stay up as well up into the 70s, which is well above our average of 65 degrees. Now, with the start of the new season, there is already some controversy, but we're here to set the record straight about why this season has two names. Here's Alex Wilson with some answers.
'Tis the season, time for the great debate. No, not that one.
I say fall. I was just brought up to say fall. That's the way I say it. But autumn is an elegant word, and I wish that I said autumn.
I usually just say fall, but I refer to the autumn leaves.
Well, which is it? Why does the season, starting during the third week of September, have two names? The terms winter and summer have been around about 1,000 years, distinguishing between the coldest and warmest parts of the year. But it took time to recognize other seasons. Autumn, a Latin word used in the 14th century, loosely means end of harvest or season. In the 16th century, fall of the leaf referred to the season following summer. This was shortened to fall. Both words, fall and autumn, were transferred to North America a few centuries ago.
Fall. Yeah, we're in the South, so it's fall. I feel like autumn is like a northern word. Like fall is just like Halloween and corn mazes and, you know, apple cider. So I always say fall.
Autumn is still used in the UK, but there's a third option. In the 1300s, it was called harvest. But it doesn't matter what you call it. Get out and enjoy what most people consider to be the best of all seasons. I'm Alex Wilson, the Weather Channel.
Is this really a debate?
No, it's fall. There we go.
End of story.
Settled.
All right, back with more on the threat for severe storms next.
Destruction in the capital region of Canada. Take a look at the damage left behind from 3 tornadoes that struck there on Friday. The strongest, an EF3 tornado with winds as high as 165 miles an hour.
4 people remain hospitalized, one in critical condition. Meanwhile, utility crews work to restore power to the Ottawa suburbs. This after more than 200,000 customers lost power. Well, thanks for joining us here on Weather Center Live. I'm meteorologist Alex Wallace.
And I'm meteorologist Tevin Wooten. More than 100 million people are at risk for severe storms this week. Dr. Erica Navarro will join us to time out those storms in just a moment. But we start in the northeast with storms moving into that area. This is not a welcome sight. You can see the crumbling road with the threat of a landslide. This is in Pennsylvania, just about 15 miles outside of Pittsburgh. Right now, road workers are putting up larger barriers along Hillside Avenue.
Yeah, it's a really wet time out there for us, and that's the case spreading from essentially the mid-Atlantic and eventually going to take over a good chunk of New England as well. Here's what it looks like right now. We've got showers around Buffalo, D.C., New York, up towards Burlington as well. Not quite there in Boston. Maybe the western suburbs starting to see some sprinkles, but before long, you'll see that rainy icon showing up in Boston, where temperatures are now in the lower 60s. Here's a closer view. We've been socked in around Albany for several hours here. That continues. A few spotty showers around Syracuse. There we are in the Boston area. You get a fairly light activity if it's moving on through, more like drizzle, but that'll pick up in intensity. You can see some of the darker shades of green in the western part of the state of Massachusetts. That's all marching its way eastbound, so before long, things will get wet there. Most of the action right now is west of Philly, there along 95 there for you, and down around Baltimore and D.C., again, also to your north and west at the moment. So here's what's going on. We got moisture continuing to stream on in from the deep south, the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the Atlantic, moisture streaming in there as well. So that's what's keeping things a bit on the soggy side here for our day, and that's going to continue. Here's your timestamp here as we head through the afternoon. Putting it into future mode, all this wet weather sliding towards the north and the east. So filling in here across Maine this afternoon, getting into the evening, the rush hour there. Still pretty wet heading down towards New York City. And then things are drying out there down around D.C., Philadelphia, New York. But look back towards the west. There's some showers and storms moving through the eastern lakes. Some of those may start to move on through for tomorrow. So we're not out of the woods just yet. And, of course, with all this wet weather, low clouds hanging around, there's going to be at least the possibility for some airport troubles. See all the areas that are shaded in that red, all those airports could see some impacts because of that rain and the low clouds. Tevin?
All right, well, let's slide back towards the west a little bit because there is a red zone today for severe weather across the Midwest. Among the targeted spots are Chicago and St. Louis as we take a live look at both of you. Seeing some sunny skies right now, partly sunny skies, at least in Chicago, and that's what you don't want because with a Torcon of a 3, there's a chance of tornadoes that could spin up today. Meteorologist Yem Cantori shows us how the ingredients could come together for severe storms to form.
All right, now that we are in fall, we are in our second transition season of the year. Of course, spring being the early one. Fall is a transition season, and it's those seasons that we can get severe weather. We can get them all seasons, but we watch out certainly in the transition seasons. You'll notice that we have a 3 today, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, in terms of our Torcon index. But around that, there are smaller Torcon indices of 2 and even 1. So it's kind of elongated like this because we'll watch an approaching cold front today make its way to come to the east. But what gives us this 3 count today? All right, let's talk a little bit about the atmosphere over this area. Of course, you need moisture. If you don't have moisture, you're not going to have showers and thunderstorms. And certainly we've got plenty of that. And some of that moisture goes pretty high, too, up to about 12,000 feet, where we find a good deal of moisture here. What's interesting is I actually think it's pretty dry up around 15,000 feet, up to 20,000 feet, which is where these thunderstorms are going to grow. So could we, in fact, get a little bit more of a hail risk than is potentially foreseen today? And the answer, I think, is yes. So that's something we need to watch out for. All right, instability. How do you take that moisture? And what do you do with it? Of course, instability is one of the key ingredients there for tornadoes. You got to have instability, you got to have shear. Instability is pretty high throughout much of the atmosphere. It's not super high. It's not off the charts. And remember, we're going to be using it all day today. All right, so we're going to have multiple rounds of thunderstorms over Fort Wayne through this afternoon and this evening. So we're going to take away a little bit of that. Does it take away enough of it so that you don't tap into the shear? That's the next thing that we're going to look at in through here. So the atmosphere, again, doesn't show a lot of change in wind direction with height. Our winds are going to be out of the south, out ahead of the cold front, right? But if you go, let's say, up to about 8,000 feet, you'll notice there's a little bit of a change in that direction. It goes a little bit more southwesterly, right? So those winds come around a little bit, they veer a little bit, and that's going to give us what we call a horizontal roll, especially when you look at the fact that the winds are 8,000 feet, 38 miles per hour, down to the surface 9. That's almost 30 miles per hour. That's a nice little roll, but it's not a strong one. You go up to about 12,000 feet, even 16,000 feet, you get up to about 49, 58 miles per hour. You're going to get a little bit of wind damage with these. So that's what the atmosphere really shows us today. The storms that do go severe could certainly produce some damaging winds. That's how the atmosphere lines up today. Not everybody gets severe, but certainly an isolated chance at one of these storms producing a tornado.
All right, thanks, Jim. Well, coming up, we're going to talk about why dozens of families are being forced out of their homes. Well, Florence long gone, but the hurricane's impact remains a big issue across the Carolinas. Now, emergency officials took a look at just how high the river is already. They are there in Conway, South Carolina. Much of the damage is near Crabtree Swamp, which is not too far from downtown. Now, the Waccamaw River could crest around 22 feet tomorrow afternoon That water level would surpass what Hurricanes Matthew as well as Floyd did. Yeah, pretty amazing here to think just how much water that we saw come down thanks to Florence as it dumped the rain over days and days and days, just did not want to move. And now we can put it in the history books. This goes back to 1950, the highest rain totals by a tropical cyclone. Of course, we go back to Texas and Harvey in 2017, picking up over 60.5 inches of rain, just incredible amounts. North Carolina, again with Florence, nearly 36 inches there. That surpasses what happened with Floyd in 99. And here we are in South Carolina, nearly 24 inches of that rain thanks to Florence. So a lot of rainfall filling up those streams, the creeks, and the rivers. So they continue to run pretty high. A number of river gauges that are in flood stage here for us. All the ones that you can see, these icons showing you the flood stages. Orange is minor flood stage, the red moderate, and then the purple, that's where we have major flood stage taking place, including a couple here in South Carolina around the Ano area as well as Conway. We've been talking about here, the Waccamaw River, and we still continue to see that rising. This is what is anticipated here. This is where we are right now at 21 feet, which is above the record level, which was 17.9. And we're on the way to 22, so about another foot to go before we start to see the slow decline. But I tell you, Tevin, the damage already done as we are, again, above 20 feet. Above 15, residential flooding worsens, and you got Conway Marina and railroad trestles that are flooded. Once you get above 21, it's about 2 feet higher than what happened with Matthew as well as Floyd.
And Alex, another tough blow for families reeling from Florence. About 60 families in Wilmington, North Carolina were told they had to leave right away because their homes are so damaged by the storm. Chelsea Donovan from our affiliate WECT shows us why there is hope for a silver lining under gray skies.
He got greater for us and better. Yes. We're going to get over this storm.
Shedding tears and embracing, residents pray together before being forced to part ways.
I mean, who walked away from 14 years worth of stuff?
O.C. Hollingsworth has to. She's one of 64 families being told to vacate ASAP from the Glen apartment community.
There's this gaping hole. This whole bed is soaked.
80% of the 491 residents had damage from wind, rain, and falling trees courtesy of Florence.
It just poured out and everything. You see the mold on the wall.
Monday was spent feverishly and frantically salvaging their life's work.
It's like you're losing stuff, your personal stuff that you have a routine for. You're losing because you're trying to gather everything and keep everything together. I mean, it's hard. You know, who can just move in a day?
The Glen sent out these notices on Saturday, terminating leases due to unrepairable damage. Mold, water, and asbestos have now made its way into many homes.
It's like was very devastating, you know, because you looking like, okay, where do I go? How do I begin from this? You know, it's like it was very emotional.
It's perfectly legal to terminate the leases, according to a North Carolina general statute. In terms of relief, though, FEMA has now stepped in to help those who are left with no place to go.
If their homes or their rental apartments or homes become unlivable, they may be eligible for some type of transitional sheltering allowance.
For now, many are trying to stay positive after a second blow by a storm that's already taken so much.
We're going to make it.
Yes, we are.
We're going to make it.
And we're going to come out better.
Yes, we are.
And for anyone trying to clean up along the Carolina coast, we've got Invest 98L to watch. The good news with this is that it's a disturbance that won't be anywhere near as strong as Florence. But Dr. Navarro, this could still be a nuisance because it's bringing some rain right now, even to the Carolina coast.
Yeah, absolutely, Tevin. Of course, any precipitation at this point could be a nuisance to areas in the Carolinas as they recover from Florence. So with a system lingering off our coastline, that's definitely something that we have to take a look at. Looks like I have the wrong graphic here in place. So I'm going to adjust this to make sure we get to the correct thing. But with this system just off the coast here, there is a chance to see that development in the next couple of days. But we're not expecting it to be quite strong if it actually does develop. Right now, it just looks like there's a lot of moisture in place with the system here. But given our current track in the intensity as well as the forecast, we're expecting this to stay offshore. Here's a look at some of those outer bands moving into areas in eastern North Carolina. But if we put this forward in time, watch watch what happens as we head throughout the afternoon today. That circulation and a lot of the precipitation associated with it does look like it stays mostly off the coast. We will see potentially some stray activity start moving into the eastern and central parts of North Carolina, but it doesn't look like it's going to be substantial or heavy at this point in time. Potentially that area could come a little bit closer than models are indicating. That would maybe put the Outer Banks more in play for some heavy precipitation. But even if it does, we're only talking about an inch or two of precipitation at this point. It's not going to be anything like those totals we saw with Florence. So that's certainly good in terms of the recovery efforts. Hopefully we get a nice break to allow a lot more time for things to dry out. We will have a high rip current risk, though, along the beaches. Of course, Alex and Tevin, this is something we have to watch very closely as well.
Thanks, Dr. Navarro. Well, there's a lot more action happening in the tropics, and Dr. Navarro is going to have another look at the other areas we're watching.
Plus, that sniffle you're dealing with could be a cold, or is it your allergies?
We'll take a look at this. This is Super Typhoon Trami in the Pacific here. It's the strongest typhoon on the planet right now. Winds around 150 miles an hour. Also, a very powerful hurricane, typhoon, I should say, that's hanging out there. And you see where it's going to be headed here as we head through time. Right now, moving to the north, barely moving 1 mile an hour, but turning to the northwest and then curving back to the north and the east as we head on through the weekend. Could have an impact on some of those islands there of southern Japan. So one to watch, no doubt. What about a bit closer to home? Well, let's bring in Dr. Navarro because this time of the year, we're still in that time of the year where we can get a lot of activity. We've got a lot of activity. The question is, will that have an impact on us?
Right. That's the important part, right? If there's activity out to sea, does it bring those impacts close to land? Well, just a reminder, it is late September, and at this time of the year, it is not uncommon to see a lot of activity out in the Atlantic. You look at all these origin points here for late September. This is using our history. Many areas often see tropical development, so this is fairly typical for this time of the year. But we do have some disorganized systems here that could regenerate or maybe bring some impacts to land, but they don't look too substantial at this point. So that's certainly some good news. We're not looking at those really strong or significant impacts at this point. But this is the remnants of a circulation here that once was Kirk. It no longer has a well-defined circulation underneath these clouds, but those clouds are still persistent, and so they do have a chance here of redeveloping as they head off to the west into the coming days. A 60% chance being indicated by the National Hurricane Center.
So a pretty decent shot here for us, and of course, down the line, hopefully folks there across the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, don't want to be dealing with anything tropical entity, but certainly one to monitor.
Absolutely. We'll keep a close eye on it, but at this point, it doesn't look like we're talking about big impacts in terms of tropical system. Of course, be on the lookout for some heavy rainfall associated with that. Now, this is Leslie, the final advisory at this point, because this system is undergoing some changes, but this might not be the last that we're going to see of this system because it is going to be interacting with some upper level features, and that may weaken it in the current time, but then it may come back in the coming days. But again, it's going to stay out to sea. So the good news is we're not expecting to see those land impacts from that system. But there it is, Alex. It just kind of sits and spins in that general area in the central Atlantic. If you saw the remnants of Kirk go away, it looks like they get sheared apart. And even that Invest area off the coast looks like it gets pulled together into the general big picture with Leslie. And then things move out to sea after that. So looks pretty quiet in the tropics.
It looks like Leslie will be the last man standing here that will follow for the next several days. All right, thanks, Dr. Navarro. Tevin, we'll send it over to you.
All right, guys. Well, here's a look at the foliage in downtown Milford, New Hampshire. Take a look at the tree line in the back. We have some oranges starting to show up on the trees. Of course, we do know that we are starting to approach the peak of what's known as fall foliage season all across the country. So let's break that down for you and show you some of the different seasons or some of the different times and zones we can expect those leaves to turn their nice shades of yellows and oranges that remind us of fall. For right now, some patchy activity is being reported in the New England states over to New Hampshire. Maybe near peak as well, but typically you see that activity start to approach its peak in late September from Burlington all the way over towards Bangor, and then a little bit back towards Syracuse, New York too. And then south of that, it's not until mid-October or maybe late October when you see that nice shade of orange and yellow, maybe even red to brown too. Out towards the west, near the Rockies, some spots near Utah already seeing near peak conditions being reported for some of the fall foliage activity and that nice shade that we expect to come through with fall. Of course, Alex, one thing that we don't want to see would be the rain come through in high winds because then that knocks the leaves right off the trees and you never see those colors.
Yeah, you're right. Well, you know, your sneeze and cough may be symptoms of a cold, or it could be your fall allergies kicking in. Meteorologist Chris Bruin spoke to doctors to find out how to tell the difference.
According to some estimates, there are 1 million colds in the U.S. every year. But with coughing, sneezing, runny nose, it's hard to tell whether your stuffy nose and watery eyes are a cold or allergies.
A cold will cause some of the same symptoms that allergy sufferers experience, including congestion and drainage and sneezing. But if you feel like you have a cold, but it has more itching of your nose and eyes, and you have symptoms persist for longer than a week, you probably have allergy.
There are other ways to tell. With winter allergies, nasal secretions are watery and clear, but with colds, they're discolored. Itchy eyes and throat are common with allergies, while colds give you chills and body aches. And if you get summer allergies, the chances are you're a good bet for winter allergies.
Indoor allergens that are of greatest relevance would include dust mites, microscopic creatures that live in dust, mold spores and mildew, cat and dog danders.
If symptoms persist for more than a week, see your doctor.
Interesting stuff there, and we are approaching very high weed pollen in Oklahoma, Texas, and some spots of Kansas and Arkansas, Alex. So break out the tissues.
Hey, into the mid-Atlantic as well. The coast, at least the Gulf Coast, looks pretty good, and up around the Northeast, Great Lakes region also not doing too bad when it comes to weed pollen issues. But yeah, a lot of folks suffer from allergies all year long.
Yeah, allergies can strike in the fall and spring, and so do severe storms. We're tracking the dangerous storm threat today, including the possibility of tornadoes. We'll time all that out in just a bit.
Head on Weather Center Live. Soaking storms move into the Northeast, where the heaviest rain will fall, and who's at risk for flash flooding.
And more than 100 million people are at risk for severe storms this week. We're timing out the rounds of storms that could produce damaging winds and tornadoes.
And a fall front will sweep across the country this week, bringing a blast of cool air to millions, who will have to wait a little bit longer, though, for it to finally feel like autumn. Weather Center Live starts right now. Well, thanks for joining us here on Weather Center Live. I'm meteorologist Alex Wallace.
And I'm meteorologist Tevin Wooten. Dr. Erica Navarro will join us in a moment with the latest on today's threat of severe storms.
First, though, we begin with some pretty wild video. You have to see. I mean, look at all that water. This is actually taking place in Tunisia. Heavy rain pounding the country here. Chaos. This raging water sweeping away cars. Now the flash flooding left at least 4 people dead. Parts of the North African country got 8 inches of rain on Saturday. That's a lot. Ended up being about half its yearly rainfall that they picked up there in just one day. And speaking of raging water, check out the scene that was unfolding here at this creek in Alexandria, Tennessee. See that water there on the right side of the screen just rushing on by. This is along the Walter Creek. The person who captured this video says the water went from just ankle deep to this in just a matter of 3 minutes. And the exact definition there of a flash flood there coming in very quickly. The area was under a flash flood warning after some heavy rain fell. There were also reports of several road closures. More rain expected here for us throughout the rest of the week. Tevin?
Yeah, Alex, today tropical downpours will douse the Northeast. Pittsburgh and New York are just a couple of places seeing the threat as we take a live look at both of you on a Tuesday, a soggy Tuesday morning. Heavy rain and thunderstorms will dominate some of these areas today. In fact, look at that mist already in some spots of New York from St. George Tower. There is plenty of rain, an abundance of moisture in the atmosphere is starting to work its way into the Northeast. So hang on to your umbrellas because you're going to need them for the better part of today, but don't put them away just yet because you'll need them tomorrow too. I'll show you that in just a moment. But for right now, we'll focus on the satellite and radar. Of course, the satellite showing you the clouds, the radar showing you the rain and what's falling on the ground from D.C. to New York all the way up to Burlington, Vermont. That's where most of that rainfall is falling. Conditions, though, temperatures are in the mid-60s, some spots in Vermont in the lower 60s. We'll zoom in to show you some of this heavier activity right near the Capital District, being the darker green to yellow shades of rain on the radar right there, working its way towards the north. We work our way down towards the south and just north of Philadelphia near 476, some of the heavier storms working their way into and pushing in towards the north and east. The good news is there's no lightning on the radar, so though they are strong, they are not severely warned for now. But maybe a gust of wind is possible. Speaking of wind, we are seeing some delays right now for LaGuardia. 36-minute delays due to the wind and some of the rain, too, falling there in New York. And here's what's aiding into that tropical moisture working its way towards the north. We've got our jet stream working its way towards the north, and so the moisture can feed all the way in from the south, and that's tropical moisture, so it's a little bit more potent. Once you lift it in the atmosphere, you condense it out, and that's going to happen along this stalled out front there, and that's going to provide the better chance of rain and storms today and tomorrow until we can get a cold front to come through and kind of clean everything out and wash it away. But for the time being today, here's where we have most of that heavy rainfall between Binghamton down to the city there, and that lasts through the 8 o'clock hour. And then eventually we dry out, at least in some spots of New York, but I think Vermont and New Hampshire, buckle up. You'll have some rain most of today and into some spots of early tomorrow. For some of these thunderstorms that come through, they could be a little bit on the heavier side, especially dropping down high rainfall rates in a short amount of time. That could prompt the chance for some flash flooding between Boston, Providence, back towards Hartford and Scranton. Alex, over to you.
Well, here's a look at severe storms in action. This is a time-lapse video here showing you a wall cloud yesterday in northern Alabama. Now, the chance for more thunderstorms does linger there for the rest of the week, but that's not the only place at risk for severe weather. You got Chicago as well as South Bend there in Indiana, all spots that are in the danger zone as storms move in across parts of the Midwest and eventually the Northeast as well over the next couple of days. For the latest on that severe threat, here's Dr. Navarro.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. There are some areas that could see some severe weather over the next couple of days as a system here pushes across the northern part of the country. Today, we'll focus on the Midwest from areas across central Missouri all the way up towards places like Chicago, Detroit, even Buffalo, western Pennsylvania could see some strong storms into the evening tonight as this feature moves off to the east. We do have a 3 on our Torcom. That's a 30% chance of seeing a tornado within a 50-mile radius. This just shows you here these conditions could be favorable with some of those storms that form today. It's a non-zero threat, so make sure you keep this on your radar, so to speak, because once again, we don't want you to be surprised by the forecast and the potential for these storms today. We have very high dew points that are affecting far north into the region, into the upper 60s and 70s in some cases, and we already have some activity on the radar that we're watching. You can see a system here pushing across the southern part of Indiana. But it's later on today that we'll be expecting those stronger storms to develop as a line of storms starts to form here across portions of the upper Midwest. As we head into the afternoon, 2-3 o'clock Central Time, that activity moves into the southern part of Wisconsin. You can see some strong storms pushing across Iowa and northern Missouri as well. As we head into the afternoon and evening, notice that line of storms moves through northern Illinois, so Chicago, 7-8 o'clock. Things could get pretty messy in the downtown area, for example, with some strong storms moving through, heavy rain as well. It continues after that, so places like Detroit, Indianapolis, Columbus, this is the region that we could be watching, and this corridor here for that enhanced threat of a tornado tonight. With some of these systems moving in, they may get enough low-level wind shear that we could see that rotation form. It is indicated in our model guidance, so it's certainly something to watch out for here into the Midwest. So that activity continues into the overnight, and it will keep going into the Northeast tomorrow. We'll see similar conditions starting to set up across the Mid-Atlantic and then into New England as well. Taking a look at the upper level winds, it looks like wind damage could be a big potential tomorrow with some of the strong downdrafts within the storm. A lot of strong winds here with the upper level jet stream moving in and the perturbations moving across it. A lot of that wind energy could get transferred down to the surface and could contribute to things like downed trees, power lines, maybe even some structural damage as well, depending on how strong these wind gusts get. This likely too will be a linear threat. You can see things really trying to line up in a big line of thunderstorms. It'll be crossing over places like upstate New York, central Pennsylvania in the afternoon and evening. And then from that point, we'll see things move across Maryland into D.C., New York City, and eventually Boston by the late hours of the evening. So places like New York and D.C., it'll probably be more like your evening commute time. In Boston, it'll be later on in the evening, likely into the overnight hours. After that, looks like things are going to clear up. So for much of New England, with the strong winds moving in and, of course, that line of storms trying to form, we have a 3 on the Torcon here as well, a 30% chance for many of these states in New England. Alex?
Well, as we keep seeing, during a storm, full tree canopies can act as a sail in the wind. Storms can cause entire trees to uproot. Well, here's a look at why the saturated soil makes this danger worse.
When storms blow through, downed trees littering the roadways and rooftops are a familiar sight, but there are many other contributing factors as well. First, most trees, about 90% of them, only have roots 18 to 24 inches deep, regardless of their height. And if you add rain 3 to 4 inches at a time, the soil around the tree will weaken.
If you have any kind of drainage problem where you've had water running down or taking your topsoil or cutting a kind of a groove into the soil, or just change in general, that's going to cause the trees to probably have a higher potential to fail.
Trees in developed areas are even more susceptible.
When people build driveways right up next to them or build a house right up next to them, you basically got into that root plate and you've damaged the balance of the tree.
Then there's the weight of the tree itself.
There's a period there, right, late summer, about 3 weeks, say August, September, where everything is very heavy and you're going to see a lot of limbs breaking live and dead.
And that can happen with wind gusts as low as 30 miles per hour. So here are some things you can do to reduce your risk. Use mulch 2 to 4 inches deep as far out from the tree as you can. Have your trees inspected each year. And have your trees thinned each year, not only to reduce the weight, but to allow the wind to pass through and reduce your chances of the tree being uprooted.
Well, check out these storm clouds that were moving into LaFleur County, Mississippi last night. That's about 2 miles north of Jackson, and certainly dark skies there. And we've got more storms that are on tap for this area today, as well as other parts of the southeast. So a rather unsettled time out there, continuing to just stay and feel very tropical in nature, and the risk for rain showers and storms over the next few days. Here's what's going on here in the setup for us. We essentially continue to bring in that moisture from the tropics, from the Gulf of Mexico, and you got also some moisture from the Atlantic. So 2 moisture sources coming in. And with some heating of the day, we'll see rain showers and some storms developing. So heads up to you there in New Orleans, back up towards Birmingham, Nashville as well. You'll see the chance for some storms across parts of Florida as well. Looks like Central Florida, the best shot this afternoon. Places like Tampa having to deal with that. Here's what's going on the radar right now. And we do see a few areas of some showers here across southeastern portions of the state of Texas. You head on into southern Louisiana, right along the coast, also back here into southwest parts of Alabama, towards the panhandle of Florida. Some of those coastal areas seeing some showers. And towards the north here in northern Mississippi, a little bit of a line of showers and storms slowly progressing on off towards the north and the east there. So as we head through the day, this is what it looks like. There's your timestamp. Put the radar into future mode, and you see how things start to develop a bit more, at least becoming a bit more numerous with the shower and thunderstorm activity as we get in towards the afternoon, dotting the landscape around Jackson, down towards Montgomery, the ATL as well. You'll hear a few rumbles of thunder in and around the city. And then later tonight during the overnight, we're basically left with the showers here across northern Mississippi. Everyone else really quieting down quite a bit. But then we do it all over again tomorrow. More rain showers and storms around Raleigh. It comes in later in the day there. Early showers and storms for places like Nashville and Little Rock. Afternoon hours, things should quiet down in those areas. And also, Tevin, not too bad with the temperatures in the low 70s.
Well, Alex, the three rivers that converge in Georgetown, South Carolina will start delivering dangerous flooding today. The floodwaters could lay siege to a good part of the coastal community for days. And as meteorologist Chris Bruin shows us, officials haven't issued a mandatory evacuation, but they are urging 8,000 people to leave their homes.
Temporary berms line highways in Georgetown. Stores are barricaded behind sandbags. The South Carolina National Guard is ready for the rush of water. If floods cut off the bridges that span the rivers, a floating ribbon bridge will serve as a backup.
Volume of water coming from the north area along the Waccamaw River and the Great Petey River going to converge in the Winyah Bay as they try to go out to sea.
Next door, traffic is flowing again on I-95 in North Carolina.
Today is squeegee day. Get the water out of the store.
Businesses are ripping up soggy carpet and cutting out wet drywall. The owner of the Noose Sports Shop is adding up his losses.
The numbers are climbing. It'll be somewhere north of $1 million, we're pretty sure.
Water still surrounds entire neighborhoods in Lumberton. Homes in Kinston are isolated islands. The Lumber River is falling, but remains in major flood stage. Several hundred people are waiting out the river at Red Cross shelters. The governor is pleading with people to sit tight.
Please stay away from flooded roads. We don't want to lose any more lives.
And it is so hard to believe we are a week and a half removed from the landfall of Florence, but the residual impacts still remain by way of flooding in North and South Carolina. In fact, take a look at some of these river gauges here. All these pinks here, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still at major flood stage right now, and they aren't going down anytime soon. We'll head towards South Carolina. Conway and Adenor, South Carolina, two of those river gauges are in major flood stage just north of Georgetown and west of Myrtle Beach. One of those in Conway hasn't even crested yet. It's expected to crest tomorrow around 22 feet. That record, though, 17.9, so well above that record is where it's going to crest in some spots of tomorrow. So what does it do at 22 feet? Well, the water levels back between Hurricane Matthew and Floyd in 1999 and 2016. It's 2 feet higher than that. And Alex, as it does go down, whenever that happens, we still have residential flooding that can occur in neighborhoods.
Yeah, what an incredible situation. Well, turning now to the tropics. Right now, the map lit up. We got a lot of circles showing up out there for us. Dr. Varro standing by, though, with a closer look at how any of these may impact us.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, especially with a system close to the Carolinas, that is a cause for concern because we wouldn't want to see those impacts coming into play here after the remnants of Florence or the impacts that Florence left in that area. But we do have a system here that has been circled by the National Hurricane Center. This has a 50% chance of developing into the next couple of days, but really that window of opportunity is within the next 24 hours or so, as this is the time those conditions might be favorable for development. But even if it does develop, we're not talking about a strong system here. This likely could be a tropical depression, and the impacts more or less will still be the same. We're talking about enhanced moisture being moved into the region and the precipitation starting to push across portions of eastern North Carolina. So taking a look at the radar, that's the system that's currently being watched. The majority of that cloud cover is offshore, but we are starting to see some bands here, some stray precipitation starting to move in across portions of the Outer Banks.